I walked along the trail by the water, soaking in the atmosphere. It was a beautiful place, though there wasn't much to see aside from some recreations with actors dressed as Vikings and a small museum. Still, I could imagine those brave explorers from 1,000 years ago setting out on their boats and starting a community at the far edge of the world. I wondered if any of them were trying to escape a disloyal partner. Nah, they were Vikings. They wouldn't stand for that. They'd just move on and start anew without looking back. Ah, to have lived 1,000 years earlier. On my way back, I stopped in Rocky Harbor and asked for directions to a B&B, the Wildflowers Country Inn, which had great reviews. I wasn't disappointed even though I was a bit tired and not very talkative. By breakfast, I felt better. A wonderful meal, warm hosts, and cheerful guests brightened my mood. Rod and Lurley were so kind it made me feel at home, and I thought about staying a couple of days to enjoy hiking and their company. I planned to visit Gromorn National Park and hike the impressive 2,600 feet. Tall Gromorn. It took me 5 hours to walk from deep in the forest, up the mountain, across rocky areas, and finally reach some of the most stunning views I could ever imagine. A patchwork of hills and ponds lay before me, with the ocean in the background. I wished I had more time to explore. My thoughts turned to who I should be enjoying this with, if only she weren't unfaithful. I took a moment of satisfaction in realizing I was at the northeasternmost tip of the Appalachian Mountains, a place I had hiked a few weeks earlier. The journey across the island was long, but Google helped me find a lovely B&B along the way. The Lilac Inn in Glovertown was a beautiful Victorian home run by the kindest owners. Keith and Eileen stayed up talking with me, listening to my troubles, and sharing a touching story about how they met and got married. They told me about a boy named Art from Holland. After his mother passed away, he went to sea when his father remarried. Art ended up in Glovertown, where he met a local girl named Myrtle. They married at 20 and moved back to Holland, and they even had a photo of themselves at 90 years old. Having too much conversation about love in such a beautiful place felt hard to bear. It was a tough night, and I cried as I lay in bed, thinking about where my own love had gone wrong. I took a few short side trips through several charming fishing villages, with names like Conception Bay, Placentia, and Dildo, which were impossible to overlook. I wanted to see the end of the first transatlantic cable. While passing through Dildo, I picked up a postcard for Harry and left with a smile. But afterward, the ride became difficult. I traveled through the towns of Heart's Delight and Heart's Desire, passing by Cupid's picnic area, finally reaching Heart's Content. Each new town name felt like a reminder of my pain. I spent only about half an hour at the transatlantic cable finish. My enjoyment was overshadowed, so I took a different route back to the main road. I arrived in St. John's late and found the Sheraton Hotel Newfoundland without a problem. It was downtown, near the harbor, and at the base of Signal Hill. I hadn't called home in a couple of days, so I decided to ring Carol. She must have recognized the number immediately. "Honor, we've missed your calls. Where are you?" she asked right away. "I'm in St. John's, Newfoundland. There isn't much internet access in the interior of the island," I replied. Before she could ask me to come home, I interrupted. "I just wanted to see if I could get a Skype call with the kids," I said. "Of course. They would love to hear from you. Can we have a quick chat afterward?" she asked, hopeful. "Sure," I answered. "With Beth?" she inquired. I took a deep breath. I wasn't quite ready for that conversation. "I need to let you know. I've had a couple of tough days. Can we steer clear of certain topics?" "Of course. I'm sorry to hear things aren't going well," she replied. "I'm going to make sure she behaves well." She gathered the kids and started our video call. We had a nice conversation, and I shared some of my adventures, like the story of Harryman and the Viking settlement. I mentioned the Lilac B&B in Susie's room, which was decorated in pinks and lace, like a little girl's dream. Marie surprised me by talking about her new Montessori school. The school year had just begun, and Beth and Carol had decided to send her there in the mornings. It was a 20-minute drive each way, but she sounded so happy it made my heart lift. I promised her a small gift in the mail and new pictures. We chatted happily for about half an hour before she asked, "Are you coming home now, Daddy? Please?" "Soon, sweetie, soon, I promise." "Why do you have to go? Why can't you be with us?" "It's hard to explain. Your mother and I just need some time apart." "Is that why Mommy cries so much?" That's probably part of it. You know I love you and your brother more than anything. Then come home. I don't like you being away. I struggled to hold back tears. How do you explain to a child that you might not return? That her mother had hurt you and changed everything? Not much longer. I'll be able to call more often, okay? No, I don't want to talk like this. I don't like it. I want you home. I will when I can. Let me talk to your grandma, okay? She passed the tablet to her grandma, still upset. I hated to see her like that. Carol's face then appeared on my screen. She doesn't understand. She's just 4. All she knows is that her daddy's not here. She'll be okay. Thanks for looking after them, Carol. You're great. She smiled. I know. I miss you too. You can only imagine how hard it is for Beth. I know. Everything reminds me of what we had and too often of what happened. Can I talk to her now? I could see Beth had been crying again, but she tried to seem strong. Thank you, Honor. I miss you so much. I miss you too, Bibi. How are you doing? She shrugged. Not too bad. I'm managing. I heard you have a new place in town. I guess you won't be back here soon. I knew the news would travel fast. There was no stopping that. I need my own space for now. I hope you understand. No, I don't get it. How can we make things better if you're not with me, in our home, with our kids? I need time, Bibi. I feel like I'm not safe right now. I'm having a hard time managing my feelings, and I have a lot of them. I'm trying to work through it and let the hurt lessen. I wouldn't trust myself around you right now. I might say something hurtful. She looked surprised and then laughed a little. You'd never hurt me, Honor. I know that. You're mistaken, Beth. I thought about doing something really bad when I was upset. When I saw you last, I was feeling overwhelmed. I'm sorry, but I need to be honest. I don't feel safe around you right now. But you didn't. You couldn't. I know you're upset, and you have every right to be. She took a breath. I'm sorry. We weren't supposed to talk about this. Why are you in St. John's? She asked. I'm visiting some family. Some cousins of my dad are here. You know that Grandma Jane was from here. Several of Dad's aunts and uncles live in the area. I always wanted to reconnect and see the family home down at the harbor. What's it like? Is it nice? It's beautiful and so different. There are lots of little fishing towns, lovely coves and harbors and rolling hills. I smiled. The people are warm and friendly, the nicest I've ever met. I even saw some moose and caribou. I almost came close to hitting a caribou while riding. It was huge, much bigger than the deer I've seen. The moose I saw was gigantic. How's your motorcycle doing? She asked. It's holding up well. I got a bit sore from riding long distances when I first got it. But I think I've gotten used to it now. I'd love to ride with you sometime. We'll do that, I replied without really knowing why. I wish things were different, Bibi. I wish it was us, and not just me. She nodded. It could be. Whatever you want, Honor. I'd go anywhere with you. This was meant to be our time. It still can be. Just say the word, and I'll come out to you tomorrow. There was a determined look in her eyes. Forget everything else. Ask me, Honor. Ask me to come. We can ride back together. No, Beth. You're not the person I want with me. That girl is gone. I will never get to share my dreams with her. She's just a memory now. You're mistaken, Honor. She's still here. She cares about you just as much as ever, maybe even more. She knows what she's lost and feels heartbroken. She wants you back. She wants to be with you and show you that she's still the same person. She made a mistake, a terrible one she'll regret forever. But she needs you, like air and water. She feels lost without you. No, she's gone. I don't know who you are. My loving wife could never have acted the way you did. We shared a deep connection. You are just someone else taking her place. You broke her spirit, and I can't forgive that. She started to cry, tears streaming down her face. Please don't say that, Honor. Don't say you hate me. You told me you loved me just a few days ago. I did, and I still do. I love you for who you were, but I struggle with what you've become. I wish things were different. I really wish they were. She wiped her eyes and tried to smile. I guess you'll be glad to know that you're not alone. Everyone is upset with me. Everyone. My father, my husband, the whole town. Each person I try to keep working dislikes me. But no one hates me as much as I hate myself. You need to come back soon, Honor. For the kids. They're going to need you." She ended the call just before I did. I wouldn't let her control me anymore. She had done that enough. I would return when I was ready, but that time wasn't now. I was in St. John's, Newfoundland, trying to clear my mind and let go of my anger. The person I loved the most had betrayed me. My friends and family had let me down, and I had walked away from a business I had built for years. If it weren't for my 2 kids back home, I might not go back at all. I felt lost, unsure of where I was headed, and I didn't want to face the sadness waiting for me. Aunt Jean found my distant relatives, second cousins to be exact. Dad's cousins and their families were everywhere. I met some of them downtown, and we ended up at a pub on George Street, where even more relatives joined us. By the end of the night, I had made some new connections. I felt a little less alone. I visited their homes and got to know the family. We talked about our roots, about Dad and his siblings. We shared many drinks in his memory. I discovered that Newfoundlanders were a close-knit group, even more so than I was used to. Family meant everything to them. It was amazing how quickly they could figure out how everyone was linked. It felt like only 3 degrees of separation among everyone on the island. They had a love for music, and every gathering seemed to include it. Maybe it was just my family, but I think it was common. They sang popular songs, often accompanied by a couple of guitars. A few of the uncles played accordions, and there was something called an ugly stick, which was a tall stick decorated with bottle caps and other items. They would shake it and hit it with another stick, creating a unique rhythm. At first, it looked odd, but some of those older men could really keep the beat. As the night went on, the group sang traditional songs. They enjoyed tunes like I's the Bee, The Old Polina, Kelligrew's Soiree, and Squid Jigging Ground. My family particularly loved Petty Harbor Bait Skiff and the Ryans and the Pittmans, which I liked the most. Each meeting encouraged everyone to share their own favorite song. Uncle Bill would eventually be asked to tell Big John, Cousin Danny would impress everyone with his Elvis act, and Aunt Marie performed a fantastic version of Wagon Wheel. If someone didn't want to sing, they were still encouraged to share something, and Uncle Johnny would recite The Face on the Barroom Floor. I knew my turn was coming. I could play a bit of guitar and wasn't shy about it, especially after too much beer and screech. I'd spent a lot of time on the road listening to music, and one theme kept coming back to me. I felt a bit shy about starting with a Taylor Swift song, but she's really good at writing about love and loss. It's interesting. It's odd to think of the songs we used to sing, the smiles, the flowers. All of it is gone. I learned something about you yesterday. Even now, looking at you feels wrong. You say you'd take it all back if you could. It was a moment of weakness, and you said, yes, you should have said no, you should have gone home. I know I messed up the chords, but I sang with heart and got a nice applause. Soon my turn came around again. I was handed one of the guitars. Cousin Ronnie never let go of his. He seemed to follow along easily. This time I chose a classic from Alan Jackson. I was feeling a bit tipsy, but I could still handle 3 chords. I thought I knew her well, but I really couldn't tell that she had someone else on her mind. It felt so right when she held me tight. How could I have been so blind? But still you wonder, who's cheating who? Who's being true? Who doesn't even care anymore? There was no doubt where my thoughts were when I didn't give up the guitar and jumped into a Travis Tritt favorite. You say you were wrong to ever leave me alone. Now you're sorry and scared. You say you'd be happy if I would just come back home. Well, here's a quarter. Call someone who cares. Call someone who will listen, or might care. Maybe one of your past loves, but don't come here with your lies. Here's a quarter. Call someone who cares. By 3 a.m., a lot of people had left. I was still in high spirits. I loved the vibe, the friendships, the family feel. I enjoyed the stories and the drinks. Most of all, I loved releasing my feelings about my loss. She also put a tall glass of water in front of me. Diane sat on a stool at the kitchen island looking down at the table while I started eating. Surrounded by 3 women I didn't know very well and one man I felt strangely at ease. They were talking about some local news when Diane got up to refill my coffee. She gently ran her fingers through my hair like a caring friend. Do you want to talk about it, dear? I looked up at her, feeling a bit shy. Where am I and who are you all? They laughed cheerfully. I'm Diane and this is my home, the woman said kindly. Your father and my mother were cousins. The party last night ended here. You seemed a bit unsteady after we left Barbara's. Her accent was strong. It sounded more like, I's Diane and dis here's me home, your fatter and me mutter were cusins. She spoke quickly, blending her words together. After 4 days on the island, I thought I was getting used to the accent, but I realized I still had a lot to learn. I remembered visiting 3 different homes, and I guessed this was the last one on the list. Looking around the table, I thought I recognized one of the women, an older one. Lena? She laughed softly and patted my hand. You got it right the first time. I felt my cheeks warm. I'd say I never forget a pretty woman's name, but I guess that would be a fib, I said, glancing at Diane and then at the third woman. She grinned and raised her cup in a friendly toast. I'm Peg. Nice to meet you. I missed the fun last night. Nobody told me there'd be a show. I stood up to clear my plate, but Diane took it from me and sat me back down. Do you remember Ronnie? I smiled. Our guitar hero. How could I forget his name? Screech does that to you, he laughed. You were really great on the guitar, my friend. It's about time you came back. I realized Diane didn't have the strongest accent. Ronnie's way of speaking was harder for me to understand. I smiled. Are you two related? I asked, nodding between Diane and Ronnie. He's my brother. You and he are like 2 sides of a coin, Diane explained. Looking a bit confused, Ronnie got up and returned with his guitar. He played a few chords and started to sing. I wrote her off for the 10th time today and practiced all the things I would say. But she came over, I lost my nerve, I took her back and made her dessert. Now I know I'm being used. That's okay, man, 'cause I like the abuse. I know she's playing with me. That's okay, 'cause I got no self-esteem. I couldn't help but sing along to the song, and soon everyone was joining in. When he finished, he looked at me and shrugged. You're running, and I'm waiting. Why? I asked, curious why he would put up with that. Diane laughed. That's what we all ask. He blushed, looking a bit embarrassed. Well, I love her. It took some time and a drink to help me feel better, but my friends listened to my sad story about lost love and betrayal. They were great at asking questions and getting me to share things I wanted to keep quiet. I even shed a few tears. When I admitted to setting the cars on fire, they cheered. Way to go, Diane laughed. Did you give him a good scare after? I shook my head. Not yet. I still want my chance. I guess I'll have one good shot at Fred next time I see him. It won't be enough, though. He's your cousin, business partner, and best friend? He deserves it. You should make it a habit to knock some sense into him, Peg said. That girl of yours is no good. Whatever that meant. She probably had a point. Even the way she said it made it sound unkind. While sharing my story, I took a moment to call my kids. I was heartbroken when Marie refused to talk. Beth was shouting at her in the background while my daughter yelled that she hated me for leaving. It wasn't a good moment for me. I thanked Carol and promised to try again the next day. We moved to the porch, and more people arrived. There was lots of storytelling, and I was encouraged to share some of my own. However, talk about my marriage was off limits for now. Diane seemed to take care of me, sitting close by and nudging me whenever I mentioned anything too painful. No sad stuff, okay? Let's keep it happy. Honestly, I had enough happy memories, and I wasn't doing much of the talking anyway. The beer kept coming, but I noticed my cup wouldn't get refilled if I drank too quickly. So I paced myself and enjoyed a nice buzz. Someone brought out 4 awful pizzas. I tried to pay, but they reminded me I was a guest. I can't just let that happen, I joked, pulling away from Diane and reaching for my wallet. Someone told me I was family, and I'll definitely pay my own way. I didn't buy the beer and I won't pay for that awful drink, so I'm covering the pizza, or I'll find someone else to share a drink with. I pulled out a strange brown bill with a big 100 on it. Diane said it was too much, and I said I guess I would just pay for the beer after all. They didn't argue after that. We talked, gossiped, and laughed. Eventually, Ronnie brought out guitars, and we had a little lesson where I learned the right way to play their songs. That's when I fell in love with their music. The Ryans and the Pittmans, especially Will Rant and Will Roar, caught my heart. I loved the song, the story, the melody, and the strong beat in the chorus. It was a fisherman's song about growing up, loving, and finding a home. A catchy and easy tune that a lively person can bring to life. We'll shout and we'll sing like true Newfoundlanders. We'll shout and we'll sing on deck and below until we see the bottom in 2 sunken boats. Then straight through the channel to Toslow we'll go. I'm the son of a sea cook and a trader. I can dance, I can sing, and I can trim the sails. I can manage a fishing line, and I look good doing it, whenever I find a spot on a boat that's free. Family members came and went, and I began to wonder if they were always having fun. I found out later that I was the reason for the gathering. They liked to have a good time, but having their American cousin here made it special. I was sitting on the couch with cousin Ronnie across from me. My fingers were sore because I hadn't put my little guitar down since we changed places. It made everyone laugh that I thought my playing was better than theirs. I can pretend to play a song well enough. With a capo and a few chords, I can play something for almost any occasion. A little music theory helps too. There are a few songs I can play decently, but pretending works fine in our setting. When I heard "It's Your Turn" aimed at me, I started playing one of my favorite songs. The next time around, I was feeling the drinks and the moment, so I played one of the greatest songs about drinking, perhaps the most moving one, Johnny Cash. It suited my voice well. I'm not a high singer, but can manage lower notes okay. Well, I woke up Sunday morning with no way to hold my head that didn't hurt. The drink I had for breakfast wasn't bad, so I had one more for dessert. By the time I reached the second verse, I noticed everyone had quieted down. The beat from the funny stick had stopped and was replaced by soft sounds in the background. I played a steady rhythm while Ronnie created a simple bass line, and I let my feelings flow. In the park, I saw a dad with a laughing little girl he was swinging, and I stopped beside a Sunday school and listened to the songs they were singing. Then I walked down the street, and far away a bell was ringing, echoing through the canyons like the lost dreams of yesterday. I managed to sing steadily with a few tears rolling down my face, my dreams of yesterday now feeling like burdens. I received no applause for that song, just a few tearful faces. Ronnie quickly lightened the mood with a fun song while I wiped my eyes. There was a young girl beside me looking sad. She held onto my arm and whispered, "Let it go, Honor. There's more to life. Not everyone will hurt you." I realized I was sitting between two college girls. I can't believe how all this happened. The girl next to me had her hand on my shoulder, leaning in close. "Sing a nice song for us, Honor. I don't want to cry anymore." I think it must have been the beer. "I don't know any songs as nice as you," I replied. She smiled widely. "Oh, come on, I'm not that pretty." "Sure, and the sun isn't that bright, water's not that wet, and girls from Newfoundland aren't the prettiest in the world." She laughed. "I can tell you have some Newfoundland in you. Sing for me, Honor." When the music came back around, little Jane asked me to sing her song. One came to mind right away. It was Beth's song, which I had started playing for her when I was only 13. I had played it many times, but not in the last 10 years. Still, the finger-picking felt automatic, and I knew it was one of the few songs I played well. It's a little bit funny, this feeling inside. I'm not one of those who can easily hide. I don't have much money, but boy, if I did, I'd buy a big house where we both could live. It was a well-known song, and everyone joined in singing the chorus. I looked at young Jane with her strawberry blonde hair, small turned-up nose, and big green eyes gazing at me. I sang the chorus just for her, the first time I'd ever sung it to anyone but my Beth. And you can tell everybody this is your song. It may be quite simple, but now that it's done, I hope you don't mind. I hope you don't mind that I put down in words how wonderful life is while you're in the world. Her head rested on my shoulder, and they asked me for another song. It was my first time playing a true acoustic song, showing a bit more than my usual rhythm guitar. I started another favorite of mine, one I could play just like the original. I had promised myself I would share it with my kids one day, and it made me sad that I hadn't done it yet. Christopher Robin and I walked along under branches lit up by the moon. Kenny Loggins' house at Pooh Corner had the place feeling lively, and I realized we had more than the 8 people we started with. There were probably over 20 in the room, with some little ones sitting on the floor. The sad part was that every song tugged at my heart. Even that kid's classic. The lyrics, "Help me if you can, I've got to get back to the house at Pooh Corner by 1. You'd be surprised there's so much to be done," almost made me tear up, thinking about my kids. At the end, Diane leaned over and kissed my cheek. "That was lovely. No more crying tonight, Bea. Give us something else for the lasses." As the intro began, Ronnie was grinning and we played a nearly perfect duet, with some lively rhythms coming in around the second verse. I sang a chorus from an Oasis song to my friends on the couch. And all the roads we have to walk are winding, and all the lights that lead us there are blinding. There are many things I would like to say to you, but I don't know how. Jane had a lovely soprano voice, and I was surprised at how well she could join in and harmonize. Because maybe you're going to be the one that saves me, and after all, you're my wonder wall. For a couple of hours, I almost forgot my troubles. I enjoyed the happy atmosphere and the company of some nice young women. I tried to sing songs when they asked, teasing my friends about why they didn't ask Ronnie to play more. After all, he was better than me. We've heard him plenty of times, Jane laughed, and he doesn't play any better than you. He can't sing better either. It felt nice to hear, even if it wasn't entirely true. He was definitely better. I could play some songs well, but I still needed practice. I could hold a tune while singing, but my voice wasn't anything special. The one thing I did have was my willingness to sing out loud. I thought about why I had spent so many years working hard, only to feel let down by those I did it for. I deserved better. I should have time for fun, adventures, and meaningful experiences. I caught Ronnie's eye and he raised an eyebrow, asking what I wanted to play next. "The Cars," I said. He grinned and started playing the catchy bass line, and I joined in on the rhythm. "I don't mind you coming here and wasting all my time, 'cause when you're standing oh so near, I kinda lose my mind. It's not the perfume that you wear, it's not the ribbons in your hair. I don't mind you coming here and wasting all my time." It seemed like a song he enjoyed. He even played the solo perfectly, and I paused to let him shine. For the first time, I noticed a young woman sitting by his feet, resting her head on his knee, holding onto his leg. She had a phone in her other hand, probably recording us. I had no idea when she had arrived. I looked from him to her, raising an eyebrow, and he nodded, offering a small, sad smile. I felt a warm buzz from the drinks I had started enjoying around noon. I had no clue what time it was, but it was definitely late. A woman on my right had changed. Now, a more cheerful girl was laughing and singing along without a care. One of the men we affectionately called Uncle had been persuaded to stand up and recite a poem. He was a bit wobbly and looked quite tired. He began with a poem I didn't recognize, which I later learned was by Robert W. A group of friends was having a great time at the Malamute Saloon. The musician was playing a lively tune, filling the room with music. In a quieter corner, Dangerous Dan McGrew sat alone, and beside him was a woman named Lou, who was fond of him. Dan was older than most, probably around 70. He began to repeat some lines of a familiar song when another man joined him. This older man, with a stronger voice, recited along, and I noticed a younger man sitting nearby. He walked over and joined them, following along with his father and grandfather. "That's right, Uncle Luke," one of the women called out. "Yes, go ahead," another encouraged. I saw Luke lose his place for a moment, but his grandson helped him by speaking louder. Suddenly the music changed to a softer melody. It felt like a deep sense of loss filled the air, as if something precious had been taken away. The older man found his rhythm again, and everyone fell quiet. I had my arm around Jane, who whispered, "Isn't this wonderful?" It indeed was. A family gathering around their elder, sharing a poem he had likely spent years learning. His son and grandson joined him, sharing words passed down through generations. Some people were taking videos, and I imagined the young man's grandchildren watching these memories years from now. It was heartwarming to witness such strong family ties and respect. When he finished, he walked over to a cheerful older woman and kissed her. Laughter and teasing filled the room. 53 years, Jane softly said. "They came all the way from Torbay for you. That's quite special." It really was. Dan made his way to the couch, and the young woman beside him stood up to help him sit down next to me. I turned to him with a smile. "Honor Nolan," I introduced myself, extending my hand. His hand was rough, like tree bark. "Luke," he replied. "I'm your father's uncle. He was a good man. I'm sorry for your loss." I felt tears welling up. "Thank you," I managed to say. Even after nearly 20 years, the pain lingered. It seemed like a break in the activities had come. People were chatting, but there was no singing now. Jane got up and went to the back, probably for a moment alone. "Are you staying long?" Luke asked me. "I'm not sure. No solid plans right now." He nodded. "I'd like you to come by for dinner on Sunday." I laughed lightly. To be honest, I don't really know what day it is. When is Sunday? He chuckled. I wish I had enough days left to forget which is which. It's Friday night, my friend. Did you think we would have such a big crowd on a weeknight? I realized that last night had felt almost as full, though perhaps not as varied. Tonight, people of all ages were here, and I was surprised to see more than 30 faces. The kitchen table was full, and the floor was packed with folks sitting around. I felt lucky to have a place to sit at all. I'd be honored, I said politely. He smiled at me, and I could see the joy in his eyes. No, my friend, I believe we would be honored. Jane came back from her quick trip and leaned over Uncle Luke. I'm so glad you came, Grandpa, she said, giving him a gentle kiss on the cheek. He smiled widely. Are you going to entertain us, Janie? She blushed a bit. I thought I might, just a little. She handed me a piece of sheet music. Could you play this? It's very slow, just an easy strum every measure. I opened the sheet and saw it wasn't too hard. There were no tricky chords. It was in Gaelic, and I didn't understand the words. I tried playing a few lines, but she stopped me. Strum a bit slower. Let all the strings sound. I played again, and she beamed. Perfect. Try the first line. She listened as I played the chords softly, humming the tune, then almost whispering the words. She slowed me down again, and I was curious how slow we could really go. Then she gave me a kiss on the cheek. That's perfect. When she stood up, she pulled me up too. The young man who had shared a poem with his grandfather sat down to hold the music in front of me, and soon we had everyone's attention. Jane walked over to her grandmother, pulled her up, and had her sit beside Uncle Luke, then returned to stand next to me. She nodded, and I began the first slow strum. As I played, Jane began to sing. Last night I returned home, on the other side of the hill where I am. A chill ran down my spine as soon as she started. Her voice was high and soft, and even though I didn't understand the words, it was the most beautiful sound I had ever heard. She sang for her grandparents, and I watched as the older woman held Uncle Luke's hand in hers. Later I learned that the song was called For Ireland I'd Not Tell Her Name. Halfway through, Uncle Luke stood and took the woman's hand, pulling her into his arms. They began to dance slowly. I heard a child say something, then a soft, hush, and it became quiet. All I could hear for the rest of the song was Jane's beautiful voice. I got the feel for the song after a couple of verses and began to play a simple finger-picking pattern mixed with gentle strumming. The music took over, guiding my fingers in a way I had never experienced before. I closed my eyes, letting her voice lead me, even playing a melody when she paused. I knew this was just the beginning. It couldn't end yet. She should never stop singing. I heard her take a breath, so I turned down the music, letting her voice shine through with just a little background sound. Her voice got louder, and I played harder, matching her wonderful tones. I felt chills on my arms and a tingle down my back. Her singing slowed, and I followed along, adding chords to stretch out the sound. I could sense we were nearing the end. Her voice rose, powerful and filling the space. I hoped I could support her beautiful sound. She held a note for what felt like a long time, and I played 3 notes that fell softly, then stopped when she finished the last line on her own. Is our Erin ni neosain tehi? I heard laughter and cheering, so I opened my eyes. She was smiling brightly, her eyes sparkling, her hair shining like an angel's. She reached out and touched my arm, sending a thrill through me. It felt magical, and I was part of something special. Nanny's song, she said, and I saw the silver-haired woman nearby, smiling and reaching up. I leaned in and she kissed my cheek. Thank you, she whispered. Her face lit up with joy. She looked beautiful in that moment, and I noticed Uncle Luke's proud smile as he held her close. 53 years of love and admiration. I struggled with my feelings. I knew I would never have that. I thought of what I had lost and how her betrayal had affected us all. It felt heavy inside me, and my eyes filled with tears. I need a moment, I said, letting my guitar slip from my hands as I turned to leave the crowded room. I almost ran to the door. I sprinted about 20 yards down the path before I stumbled, unable to see clearly. I fell to my knees, breathless and overwhelmed by sadness. I leaned forward and let the tears flow. I was starting to breathe a bit easier when I felt an arm around my shoulders. Looking up, I saw Jane's worried face. She didn't try to shush me. She stayed close, letting me express how I felt, ready to support me. "I'm sorry," I finally managed to say. She didn't answer with words, but squeezed me gently and rested her head on my shoulder. I wiped my tears and tried to smile. "You were amazing," I said quietly. "The most beautiful thing I ever heard." Still, she stayed quiet. Then she turned to face me, hugged me tightly, and I felt her hair brush against my head. I held on to her, feeling safe as more emotions came pouring out. I cried in her embrace. When I finally stopped, I felt embarrassed. I hadn't cried since my father passed away, and now it seemed to be happening often. It was the third time in just a few weeks. She must have noticed how I felt and gave me a gentle squeeze before stepping back. "You always play that song beautifully." I shook my head. "Never. I had never heard anything like it before. All I could do was follow your voice." She looked surprised. "You had your eyes closed for most of the song. You didn't even watch the music." "I didn't need to. I knew what you were going to do, even without knowing how." She smiled. "Do you know what I'm going to do now?" I grinned back, glancing at her lips. "I hope so." I closed my eyes as her lips touched mine, the same lips that produced those beautiful sounds from earlier. She gently moved her tongue, and I opened my lips for her. It felt as magical as the music, a perfect moment where we connected deeply. We were soft, caring, then playful together. She grinned as I pulled at her lower lip and left little kisses around her mouth. She stood up slowly, pulling me with her, her hands in mine. "Oh, Honor, my legs hurt just thinking about you kneeling on the gravel." I wished she hadn't said that. I could finally feel the stones digging into me, my legs half asleep, stinging as blood flowed back into them. I stood up carefully, shaking them out. She released one of my hands and led me toward the house. "Where are we going?" I asked when we reached the porch step. She squeezed my hand. "You're a new Honor. You should say, 'Where's we coming to?' instead of 'Where are we going?'" She said it in a playful accent. I laughed and tried my own impression. "So, where's we coming to, Bia?" "You're going to apologize to Nanny. She thinks she hurt your feelings." "All she said was thank you," I replied. "It wasn't her fault." "Of course not. Just tell her that, and then you and I can go for a walk. I need to hear your story." My ears felt hot. I wasn't sure I wanted to talk about what had happened recently. But soon, I found myself in front of Nanny. "I'm sorry I ran out. It wasn't you. I'm just going through a tough time right now. I hope you can forgive me." She smiled, and it lit up her face. "After a performance like that, I'd forgive you for almost anything. Thank you again." Her Irish accent was lovely, a sound that I cherished. "You're very welcome. I was thrilled to be part of it." "Are you a professional?" she asked. I laughed. "Not at all. I'm not even very good. Something beyond me guided my fingers through that song. I couldn't do that again in a million years, even if I practiced daily." "Really? I bet you could do it tonight if Janie sang with you again." Her eyes twinkled with mischief. I turned red. "I won't take that bet." Janie pulled my hand. "Sorry, Nanny, but I'm taking him back. We need to talk." Nanny smiled. "As long as it's talking, I'm happy. Just keep those quiet moments short, all right?" It was Janie's turn to blush. "I swear, Nanny, talking." I felt a few people glance our way when she pulled me away from the little party. It was a nice boost to my confidence. I could use that right now. Once we were outside, she turned and gave me a quick kiss, which caught me off guard, then took my hand and pulled me down the road. "Tell me everything," she said, walking close and nudging my arm with hers. "I guess you've heard most of it already." She nodded. "Yeah, about 6 different stories. I want the whole thing, from the beginning." I sighed, trying to figure out where to start. I began with my time with Beth before the trip to China. "Wait," she interrupted. "From the very beginning. When you met? How you got close? All of it." I laughed a little. "That's a long story. We might as well sit on the porch. If we keep walking, we'll be in Gander before I finish. I'm not dressed for a hike." She giggled. "I know a great spot," I started explaining. "I was 9 and she was 4. She lived next door and was always with my little sister, cute like only a blue-eyed, blonde, round-cheeked toddler can be. It was little Beth who gave me a nickname that would stick with me forever." We stopped by a cooler to grab a 6-pack. She held onto my hand and we found a spot on the porch swing. With my arm around her, we listened to the sounds of the party still going on inside. She was a wonderful listener, hardly interrupting. I was 19 and she was 14. I had the grades to get into many colleges. Carnegie Mellon was one of the best, and I could almost cover my entire education with scholarships and grants. The scholarship from the local VFW really helped. I was excited to go home. She laughed when I mentioned Beth sneaking into my room. She was 14 and climbed into your bed? Weren't you scared? What if her parents saw you? I shrugged. I'd tell them the truth. We just cuddled and kissed. I wouldn't go further. They knew that. Beth wanted to for sure, but I wasn't ready. Jane seemed doubtful. A 19-year-old with a young girl in his bed? Hard to believe you wouldn't take it further if she was up for it. What would her parents believe? Of course, I wouldn't lie to them. They knew that. I loved her even more than I realized at that moment. But we had always been together. Wow, sounds like cool parents, Jane said. Go on. I was on my second beer by then. I took her to the senior prom. She looked gorgeous, tall, and beautiful, the most stunning girl I knew. I went all out, renting a limo and taking her to a fancy dinner, dancing with her and her friends. After that, I took her to a hotel. I was 23 and she was 18 when we shared that special moment for the first time. Oh my God, Janie interrupted. You've been together since she was 4? You had your first experience together at 18, right after prom? You grew up together? Pretty much. We were meant for each other. Everyone knew we would be together, even before I realized it. I thought it would last forever. She sighed and laid her head on my lap. You're right. This is a long story. Slower than molasses. I hope you don't mind if I get comfortable. I shared our journey through the wedding, my first job, and Beth's graduation without too many breaks. Beth graduated without any student debt. I had been in business for over a year, and most of the tough times were behind us. I no longer faced all the worries of starting a new venture alone. We were partners in life, love, and business. I was 28, she was 23. 2 weeks after our second honeymoon, I found out I was going to be a dad. Janie sat up. Can I take a break, Honor? Listening is harder than I thought. Let me use the bathroom and we can continue. Of course, I replied, watching her walk away. She was small compared to tall Beth, a bit curvy. I never really had a thing for redheads, but she reminded me of a cheerful actress with a hint of red in her hair. She was adorable, and I wondered why she was spending time with me. She returned a couple of minutes later and sat on my lap. I need another kiss, Honor. Is that okay? That sounds great, I told her, and our lips met. I felt a rush of warmth, and as we embraced, it felt special for both of us. She pulled back and looked into my eyes. After another gentle kiss, she laid back on my lap, her head resting comfortably. She had brought a blanket and offered me some, but I was already too warm. You were going to be a dad, she reminded me. The next 5 years were wonderful. My business grew to over 50 employees, mostly family. We were well known in town, bringing in visitors and extra business. My wife blended perfectly into my family. Our 2 kids, Marie Carol and William, were happy, loving, and well cared for. I talked about our life, our blessings, and the love we shared. And then, there was the trip to China. She giggled. Finally, you were right. This story is much longer than I expected. By that point, the gathering was winding down. Friends came by to say goodbye as the place emptied out. A few partygoers still lingered, but most left for their cars parked out back, while others living nearby said their goodnights. I continued, Our time together was amazing. It had been better than it had in a while. That's why it surprised me when she turned to me and asked if I was happy. Her answer to the same question surprised me even more when she said she was happy. Mostly happy, was what I remember her saying. Did she explain why? She gave me a few reasons, mostly saying I wasn't around enough. At that time, I didn't realize that she had already been unfaithful. She spent a whole week with my business partner while I was away. Now she was asking if I was happy and hinting at her issues. Even then, she didn't say much. She just asked me not to go on my next trip and suggested that her partner could go instead. Unfortunately, there was a lot happening on that trip that I thought I couldn't hand over to anyone else. If she had shared her true feelings, I would have found a way to manage it, no matter the cost. My marriage was worth that. Millions? Really? Was the trip that important? She asked. Definitely. I was in the final stages of negotiating a patent deal, and that trip was essential for it. We faced quality control problems with a vendor, and I needed to find a replacement quickly to avoid halting production. I was also interviewing someone new to help lessen my workload so I could spend more time with my family, and that trip was part of that process. It was crucial. I just wish I had known. You would have canceled everything for her, Jane said gently. Of course. I would have given up anything to save our relationship. She meant everything to me. What I didn't realize was that it was already too late. I talked about coming home early, the party, my deal in Manhattan, and what I found when I arrived. I walked in on them in my living room. My wife was there, with my best friend and business partner. They acted like I wasn't even there. I was in shock. It felt unreal. Not her. Never her. They didn't even notice me. I stepped back outside, overwhelmed with anger, and did something I would regret. I left a trail of destruction and decided I was done with both of them. But little did I know my troubles were just starting. It would get worse. Worse than your childhood love being unfaithful to you with your best friend? Much worse. My mother knew and was covering for them, watching the kids while my wife was unfaithful. She had been aware from the very start. My sister knew too. It turned out that everyone else knew as well. Most of the people who worked for me admitted they knew something was off, but not a single one thought to tell me. Nobody. My entire family sided with her. I felt completely betrayed by everyone who mattered to me. Oh, Honor, she said softly. Did they explain why? It seems impossible. They had their reasons. My sister explained it to me. They didn't really care for me. They liked her more. She felt more like family to them than I did. They didn't want us to break up, so they quietly tried to convince her to stop seeing me. They would have been fine with making me look foolish in front of everyone, as long as things stayed calm. I was getting really upset and my leg was trembling. I squeezed the swing's arm so tightly that my hand hurt. What traitors they are, all of them. I worked so hard for them. I supported the whole town. 217 people depended on my paychecks every month. I even funded scholarships for a dozen of their kids to go to college. I paid for my secretary's entire schooling and gave her a job. I thought she was loyal to me. She knew what was going on and didn't say a single word. It made me sick. I wanted nothing to do with any of them ever again. What did you do next? I told them. I called a company meeting and said I was finished. I couldn't work with them anymore. I gave my wife control of the company with enough money to keep it running for months. I even left the man who was with my wife in charge. He had been with me from the beginning and had a family to care for. I met with her and my mother to give them a chance to explain, but they had no good reasons. From what Beth said, she felt lonely when I was away, and he pursued her, so she went along with it multiple times. She let his brother get involved too, and I didn't understand why. It doesn't add up, Honor. You must see that. There has to be more to the story. Maybe. If there is, no one told me, even though I asked. Only one person in the whole town had the courage to apologize to me. Just one. I gave her everything and walked away because I was afraid I might do something I would regret. That's why you ended up here? No, I left for about 6 weeks to travel alone until I felt a little better. I returned mainly for the kids. I wanted to talk to Beth and understand why she did this to me. When I arrived to speak with her, she was sitting on that same couch where I found out about everything. I lost it again. Seeing her on that couch made me think of that painful day. I ran out of the house overwhelmed. I couldn't handle it. So I got back on my bike and started this journey. It took me nearly 3 weeks to get here, and now I'm here. And she's not alone? No, her mother is staying with her. I arranged for her to be there to help out and see if she could make sense of what happened. I speak to her and the kids almost every day. They still don't understand how it all fell apart. She blames it on hormones after the birth of Billy. Billy's a year old now, Jane. It didn't bother her at first, but now my daughter won't talk to me. At just 4 years old, she says she hates me for making her mother cry and not fixing it. That's my job, you know? Fixing things, making them better, always doing what's right. My name and my legacy mean something. I want to do the right thing. But what if the right thing is to leave her? You still love her, Jane said simply. I love her, and I probably always will. I've loved her since I was a kid, but I also hate her for what she did to us. I won't have a long life with the woman I love now. She changed everything because she couldn't stay true. I hate her more than I thought possible. She stood up and sat on my lap. Hold me, please? I held her close, feeling her tremble. She was crying. It should have been me upset, but she was the one in tears. What's wrong, Janie? She sniffed. Do you believe in fate? I don't know, I thought I did. She kissed my neck. I do. When I saw you tonight and heard you sing that song for me, I knew it was meant to be. Nothing had gone right in my life until then. You were there, amazing and full of pain. I felt like I was meant to help you heal. When you played while I sang, it was special. We were perfect together. I knew we were meant to be. She sighed. Now I see the truth. You're leaving. You're going back to her, and you still love her. She hurt your marriage, and everyone turned away from you, even your own mother. But you'll go back and try to fix things. You'll give them another chance. Tears shone in her eyes as I struggled to respond. They all deserve a second chance, but we won't have even our first. We could be great together, maybe even better, but she got to you first. 4 years old, and she took your heart. We never stood a chance. I'm sorry, Honor. I reached for her, but she pulled away, standing up. I won't take another woman's man. I'm not like her. If you ever really want to do the right thing, find me. I won't wait forever, but I'll be here. She took my hand and helped me stand. I need to go home now. I need to have my cry. I'll see you later, okay? Let me know when you're leaving. I walked her to her car and she kissed my cheek goodbye. Are you okay to drive? I asked. Sober as can be, she said with a little laugh. Still trying to do the right thing, aren't you? I'll be fine. I just hoped I would be too. I went inside and tried to be friendly as I sat in the kitchen and had some coffee. I decided not to join the last few people in the living room. Diane came and sat with me for a bit. Did you have a tough night? She asked. Pretty bad, I admitted. I thought you and Jane were getting along well for a while. She was probably after some gossip. She's wonderful. Any man would be lucky to have her. Unfortunately, I'm married with 2 kids and a whole town relying on me. I glanced at the clock and saw it was 4 a.m. Do your parties ever end? She laughed. Usually before this. Most weekends there's something happening in the family. You being here made it my turn to host. I'm sorry. Don't be. It was a great party. You were a hit. Too bad it took you 30 years to come back. You belong here. I chuckled. I wish. I need to head back soon, but I want to do it when I'm ready. No hurry. Stay as long as you'd like. Someone will help you until you're settled. A few more days. I smiled. I promised Uncle Luke and Nanny I'd have dinner with them. I keep my promises. I bet you do. Let me make you a promise too. My door is always open, and you'll always have a place at the table. Never forget that. I keep my promises as well. I finished my coffee and said my goodbyes. I felt clear-headed. I shouldn't, but emotions like love, anger, and disappointment had cleared my mind. I hadn't had enough to drink in the last few hours to feel buzzed. I got on my bike and headed back to the hotel. I had my nightmares. I was home, and Beth was outside on the porch, leaning in through the window. I could see a man behind her. It'll be perfect now, Honor, she said, smiling at me. Everything's perfect. I love you, Honor. You're the only one for me. Jenny, my secretary, was helping the men as they approached. There was a bucket full of reminders of those moments at her feet. I knew there was another one behind her, already filled. My mother stood in the doorway, thinking she was blocking my view of the line, waiting to see Beth. I felt trapped, held down by heavy chains. They stretched out in all directions. One seemed to connect to Beth. I couldn't see it, but I sensed it was there. Another was attached to my mother, but it felt alive, moving. Some were connected to my children, where my sister watched over them. Many more stretched throughout the town, linking to the homes of the men waiting for their turn, stretching for hundreds and thousands of miles to schools across the country. One long chain reached all the way to Newfoundland, ending just outside a door. I could see where Janie would step over it when she left her apartment. She didn't even look down, not even when it turned into a big snake trying to startle her from behind. I thought I would take it easy the next day, but my new extended family had different plans. After another failed attempt to talk to my daughter online, I was persuaded to take a short trip to Witless Bay for a tour of whales and birds. My hosts were Ronnie and Jeff, Jane's cousin, the young man who had been sharing poetry with his grandfather. The trip was amazing, and we saw many whales, which the tour guide recognized by their markings. The boat took us to Gull Island, a large rock covered in birds. I was told it had the biggest group of Atlantic puffins in the world. There were a lot of them for sure, loud and a bit messy. I took many pictures. As we headed back, we had some time to chat. I asked about their jobs, but they both said they were unemployed, like many people under 25. They were recent graduates of the University of Newfoundland. Many locals left Newfoundland to find jobs on the mainland, especially in places like Labrador and Toronto. Some would still have family back home and travel for work. Diane's husband was one of those who had left. It seemed unfortunate since they both seemed smart, but they shrugged it off. Ronnie had worked at the brewery for a while but lost his job due to layoffs. Jeff was still searching for his first job after college. It made sense they had time to show me around. As we got off the boat, I was told I would be going out to a few pubs in St. John's that night, whether I liked it or not. I couldn't help but ask if Jane would be there. "Not a chance," Jeff replied. "How come? She'll tease, but she won't be part of it. Trust us, you won't be alone tonight." "I'm married," I reminded him. "We're not tying you down," Ronnie interjected. "Just a bit of fun is all." I was encouraged to go with a few younger guys. No female relatives joined us, but we were never alone for long. The guys were friendly and seemed curious about me. By the third pub, it was actually fun hanging out with my new friends. I found myself talking and laughing, taking in the lively atmosphere. As we walked to another crowded pub, Ronnie pulled me aside, wrapping his arm around my shoulders. I was surprised when he kissed my cheek and said, "I care about you, your family, but you're a bit of a downer. No one wants to hear about your troubles. Let's see some of that Yankee charm before I give you a hard time." I tried to focus on his words and not on my home life. I shared stories about my travels and my job, and of course, my thoughts on Newfoundland. The girls seemed to enjoy my tales, laughing and getting closer to me whenever they could. They were very friendly. As more people joined us, I didn't mind buying drinks. It was just money after all. I got many thanks for my kindness. Seems fair, right? Ronnie kept an eye on me, making sure I didn't overdo it. He would take my drink if I seemed to be having too much. I teased him about it a few times, and he just laughed. "We can't have you passing out. We're just getting started, buddy." I was feeling a nice buzz and not caring much about anything. My understanding of Newfoundlandese was getting better. I could understand most of what I heard. We turned onto a quieter street and entered a half-empty pub where my friends seemed to know everyone. I learned we had reached our last stop for the night. I noticed the girl who had been beside me for the last 2 bars, giving me friendly little kisses of thanks. I went to the bar to get my wallet, but Jeff stood next to me. "I've got it. You've spent enough." I argued with him, and it almost got heated. Ronnie and Neil, another cousin, jumped in to stop it. They reminded me I had already spent over $400. I'd run out of money and they'd be in trouble too. In my tipsy logic, I told them that spending a lot of money wouldn't lead me to being broke. Even if it did, I could earn it back quickly before they found jobs. I pulled out my wallet and waved my platinum card. $25,000 limit. Let's buy the house around and start a tab for my family and friends. Jeff kept arguing. "No way. If my mother finds out, I'll be in big trouble. And if my grandmother hears, I won't hear the end of it." I snapped out of my fog just enough to realize they meant well. "I care for you, buddy, but I have plenty of money," I said in my best Newfie accent. "Really, I never spend on myself. I can treat us all for one night." A familiar voice came from behind me, and I heard Jeff mumble, "Oh no." "Let him. It's just one night. He needs to enjoy himself." It was Jane. I smiled at her and reached out. "Come here, Ducky. I care for you." She shot me a glare and gave the girl next to me a pointed look. "Janie, this is Shannon. She's been nice enough to hang out with me." She turned to her cousin, looking quite upset. "Jeffrey, you're really something." He shrugged. "No harm done. Just having a bit of fun." She turned away and sat on a stool at the end of the bar. She looked furious. I got my way, at least partly. They wouldn't let me use my card, but I convinced them to let me spend my cash. I'm sure they were surprised when I took off my belt, unzipped my bag, and pulled out $1,000, my emergency money. With a couple of hundred more in my wallet, we could enjoy the night. The cousins made it clear who was being treated. About 8 guys and a few more girls, most of them some type of distant family. Ronnie pulled me away from my new friend, but not before I received another quick thank you. He took me to a small stage in the corner, handed me a guitar, and insisted that I show the crowd I was a noof. Even though I was feeling a bit fuzzy, I joined him in playing the songs he had taught me. A microphone was placed in front of me, and I sang songs by the Ryans and the Pittmans, loud and full of energy. Many people joined in, helping me remember the words for most of the verses. We played a few more favorites, and I started feeling more confident. I had a stool to lean on when my legs felt shaky. I found it easier to remember the chords and play well. I wasn't as drunk as I had thought, or perhaps too tipsy to notice. Someone brought me a drink, and I was a little let down to see it was just water and not another beer. Ronnie nudged me for one more song. "It's your turn, Honor. Show them your best. No messing around." Like many young guitarists, I had always wanted to learn a few power ballads, songs like Stairway to Heaven, Dust in the Wind, and More Than Words. Without much thinking, I placed my fingers high on the guitar and started the memorable intro to a song I had worked hard to learn. I spent dozens of hours reading music sheets and listening to it on a CD. All the details that made a song special, the bends, pulls, and timing were finally coming back. Halfway through the intro, muscle memory kicked in, and it felt natural. I might not have had a famous voice, but I put everything into it. It's all the same, only the names will change, and every day it seems we're wasting away. By the time I reached the chorus, most of the bar was singing along. I'm a cowboy, on a steel horse I ride. I'm wanted, wanted, dead or alive, wanted, dead or alive. It was amazing how, after nearly 10 years, my fingers smoothly handled the music, playing to the excited crowd. By the end, the cheers had me beaming. I had really nailed it, in a good way. I decided to slow things down with something easy and familiar. It wasn't my top Green Day song, but it was one I could play comfortably, and the theme felt fitting. Another turning point. A fork stuck in the road. Time pulls you along and shows you where to go. Make the best of this test, and don't question why. It's not just a question, but a lesson learned in time. Some voices joined mine, but only a few until I reached the famous line. It's something surprising, but in the end, it's right. I hope you had a great time. I looked at the crowd. They were watching me and singing along, truly enjoying themselves. Drinks were raised in my direction, and Ronnie was smiling and playing along. Life should be like this, not spending so many hours working hard every day. Why hadn't I done something like this since college? I used to love playing the guitar, but I had set it aside for nearly 10 years, focusing on my job and my wife. That was behind me now. I shouldn't have let my mind wander because, without thinking, I finished the slow strumming and jumped into a song I had played many times while hiking the Appalachian Trail. It was a simple ballad. We both lie quietly still in the dead of the night. Even though we are close together, we feel far apart inside. The place was still as I poured my heart out on stage. A crowd of people joined in the chorus. Every rose has its thorn, just like every night has its dawn. Just like every cowboy sings his sad song, every rose has its thorn. I got through the second verse and another chorus, but my thoughts went to Beth and what had happened. My perfect rose had a hidden sharp edge. The bridge was difficult, and my voice wavered. Tears started to well up, and I knew I couldn't continue. I tried to push through. Though it's been a... Janie stood next to me, her hand on my arm. She leaned into the microphone, her beautiful voice soft and haunting. I can still feel so much pain, like the knife that cuts you. The wound heals, but the scar stays. She turned to look at me, her eyes filled with tears, singing the last verse alone. I could barely strum along. Her words were cutting deep. Now I see you found someone new, and I never meant that much to you. To see that tears me apart, and watching you hurts me like a knife. The crowd took over for the chorus, and as they sang the final verse, she shot me a look filled with heartache. Janie stepped back to her spot and faced the bar. I put my guitar down, the cheers and applause too loud for me. A girl I didn't know came up to me, but I stopped her. "I'm sorry, I can't do this." She froze and looked up at me. She gave me a sad smile. "I'm sorry too. Thank you for a lovely evening." She brushed past my hand and gave me a quick kiss on the cheek. I walked to the corner. "Janie, Please leave me alone, she said. I'm sorry, I leaned against the bar. We were just having fun, it was nothing. She turned to me, her eyes filled with sadness. Is that what your wife said to you when she hurt you, that it was nothing, just fun? Her words hit hard and my world crumbled. All the pain rushed back as if I were seeing everything clearly for the first time. I stepped back from her harsh words, tripping over a stool and losing my balance. I fell. I found myself on the floor, surrounded by people. Janie was looking down at me, shaking me gently. Honor! 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 I could hear echoes of Beth's voice, pleading with me as I drove away for the last time. I pulled back, feeling uneasy, and noticed the fear in Janie's eyes as she looked at me. She wrapped her arms around me, tears in her eyes. I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have said that. It took a moment to understand what was happening and where I was. I realized I had been just as harsh as she was. I'm sorry, Janie. I'm really sorry, I said. She let me go, concern on her face. Are you okay? Did you hit your head? I touched my head, feeling a pulse of pain, and saw red on my hand. Blood? My blood? I don't feel well, I murmured. I didn't hear her answer if she said anything at all. What is love without respect? I woke up in a strange bed, confused, with a dry mouth and a pounding head. I felt trapped. Then I noticed a pair of warm arms around me. I almost said Beth's name, but then I heard a gentle voice. Shh, Honor. It's okay. Just relax. I'll get you some water and pain relief. The arms released me, and I felt a bit lost. I turned to see her walking away. She was wearing a simple nightgown that covered her completely, a pale green fabric with tiny flowers. She was barefoot. Looking down, I realized I was only in my boxers and quickly raised the sheet to cover myself. When she came back, she handed me some pills and a glass of water. Take these all at once. Drink up. My head really hurts, I said softly. No wonder. You were trying to drink everything yourself. I should have known better, she replied, sounding frustrated. Memories began to return, bits and pieces. I recalled her staring at me. I felt embarrassed. I don't know what to say. She lay down beside me. You don't have to say anything right now. Just relax. She placed her hand on my chest and rested her head on my shoulder, snuggling closer. Take a moment to rest. I wrapped my arm around her and she let out a sigh. I've never been this drunk before. Was I that bad? I asked. You mean before or after you made a mess of things? She teased lightly, her voice shaky. No, please tell me I didn't do anything terrible. Not to you? I pulled my arm away, feeling a rush of shame. She took my arm and put it back around her shoulder, leaning against me. Of course you didn't do anything. You could barely stand. It took 2 guys to help you into bed. How sad is that? Wow, Janie, don't scare me like that, I exclaimed. She playfully hit my chest. At least you finally got my name right. You called me Beth all night long. So rude. I leaned back, feeling defeated. Great, I mumbled. She squeezed me reassuringly. It's okay. She kissed my shoulder gently and laughed. You're famous now, you know. The noof from Away. Millionaire, rock star, sad love story, tough guy, heartbreaker, Honor the noof. I guess they got the sad part right. I'm really confused, Janie. I don't know what I'm doing or why. I feel like I'm losing control. This isn't me. I'm usually calm and serious. I thought I had my life all planned out. Maybe you need this. Let a different side of you be free for a while. You're too young and too good-looking to be so serious all the time. I chuckled. Nobody calls me good-looking, Janie, not even my mom. That's just silly. You stand out. You're strong with broad shoulders. You look like a lumberjack, not a businessman. She tugged my beard playfully. Maybe we should trim this. I wonder what's underneath. Just a plain face, she laughed. I doubt that. She paused for a second. Are you really a millionaire, or was that just talk? You said you gave your business to your wife. You weren't joking, right? No, not at all. I took a little money out before I left, less than 20% of what was there. I just sold a patent for a couple million. I took a bit from my investments, but it wasn't much. Yes, I have a few million. But it's just money. Doesn't mean much in life. What's the treasure you've got? She asked playfully. I was just rambling last night, wasn't I? She nodded. Trying to show off? No way. I just want to spend my money. They wouldn't let me. I earned it, so I should enjoy it a bit. What's that treasure? She asked again, trying to keep me on track. I sighed. I sold the patent because I have a better one. If the first one was worth a couple million, this one is worth even more. I was going to use it for my business until I got a big shock. They don't deserve it. I gave them the business, but without the patents, they'll struggle. Are you just going to leave them to manage on their own, then? I was starting to feel a bit defensive. Why not? They let me down, every single one of them. They said it was my fault for working too hard, for putting all my time into a business I cared about. I felt my frustration rising. I never loved that business. I did it because I had to, for them. I gave everything to that town and my family, and they turned their backs on me. Forget them. She sighed and pulled me close, hugging me until I calmed down. After I started to breathe normally, she kissed me softly. That was a nice kiss. I don't believe you, Honor. I frowned at her. Are you saying I'm lying? I don't lie, I really don't. She kissed me again, a bit longer this time. No, you're lying to yourself. You won't let them fail. You'll help them. Help her, I know it. Why should I exclaimed. I'm not saying you should. I'm saying you will. I'm not sure how or why this will happen, but it will, and it might be soon. I didn't want to agree, but she was likely right. They let me down, Janie. Everyone. My wife, my mother, my family, my co-workers. All of them. Every single one. I know. I'm sorry. You deserve better. They don't see it, but you'll still find a way. That's just who you are. I don't like them, I said quietly. You don't like what they did. Why? Why didn't anyone stand by me? Didn't I deserve at least that? I dedicated my life to them. She turned onto her back, and I did the same, leaning over her, looking into her gentle eyes that were filled with tears. I don't know, Honor. I can't make sense of it either. I kissed her deeply. My hand moved to her side. After a moment, she gently pushed me away. No. I wish things were different for you, but you're still tied to the past. Not like this. She was right. I paused and leaned down again, giving her a soft kiss. You're right, Janie. I haven't moved on yet. I don't know how. I'm trying. Take the time to sort things out. If one day you're ready, think of me, Honor, please. I will think of you always. There's something about you that pulls at me. It feels like something inside me is calling. She brought my face closer, kissing me with a sense of belonging. I know that sound. It's like a faint echo of my own feelings. She pulled back. I thought you could rest a bit more, but it seems you're awake now. We should both get ready and head back to your hotel. I'd let you treat me to breakfast, but for a wealthy man, you're a bit short on cash. Why don't you clean up first? Then, if it's okay with you, we can go to my place. I can tidy myself up and buy you a big breakfast. She laughed. Not happening. We're having Sunday dinner at Nanny's. She'd be upset if you arrived hungry. A light brunch will be fine. I leaned back and relaxed while she prepared. I listened to her moving around, singing in the shower, chatting from the bathroom. I had some wandering thoughts, but I tried to set them aside. After a bit, I got up and dressed in the clothes from yesterday. They were not fresh, but it would have to work. A little over an hour later, I felt more put together as we sat at a sidewalk table, enjoying the warm sun and a hearty English breakfast. Janie studied me. Who are you, Honor? The man who opens up to strangers? The lost child? The free spirit? The broken soul? The bar singer? The mysterious traveler? Who are you right now? I wish I knew. For now, I'm just a lonely guy enjoying the company of a kind woman under this beautiful sky. How much longer do I get to spend with you? When do you have to leave? She asked, a little anxious. I don't really know. No solid plans. I need to go back eventually, I know that. I want to find some closure, but I'm scared. Scared? You? Why? I shrugged. I don't know. I guess I'm worried I'll get pulled back in, lose myself, and keep doing things for everyone else. They always tell me I'll make the right choice. I always do. It's kind of a burden. I'm scared of finding out what the right choice really is. I'll tell you what the right choice is, Honor. Think about yourself for once, before it's too late. I'm trying, Janie. No, you're stuck in your sadness. Let it go. Forget about it for a while. That's easy for you to say. Beth has been my focus all my life. She shook her head. Everyone has felt heartache, Honor. It's amazing you've made it this far without it happening more. It hurts, but then it hurts a little less. Over time, it just becomes a memory you try not to think about. I looked at her with confusion, and she paused. What? Where did your Newfie accent go? She blushed. I thought you liked Newfie girls, Bia. I raised my eyebrows, waiting for her to continue. She laughed. You're just too cute. Most of the younger crowd fit in with the company. Around their parents or down at the harbor when the accent slips out, you go along with it. When I talk to you, I guess I pick up your way of speaking. All of you? Oh no! Ronnie, Diane, and them could never speak without their accents. I can lie if I want to. Sure. I looked her right in the eye. What if I said I think you're not pretty? She pouted, surprised. Oh no, I didn't mean it. You're beautiful, really. You take my breath away. You're the furthest thing from not pretty. I'm sorry. She chuckled. You can't lie at all, Honor. Just a few seconds later, you're backpedaling. She squeezed my hand. That's not a bad quality, you know. On the other hand, she continued, I'm not sure how I feel about someone who could say something like that so casually, trying to hurt me. She looked hurt. I was taken aback. Had my joke really gone that wrong? I said I'm sorry, Janie. I didn't mean it. I think part of you did. It wasn't kind. Janie, I swear I didn't mean it. She winked at me. Now that's how you tell a lie straight-faced, with no feelings. You have to sell it. I was speechless, my lips moving but no words coming out. She giggled. I'm just kidding, Honor. Wow! That was a bit harsh, I said. And you think I don't have a right? Or do I need to remind you of last night? I felt my face turn red. Okay, you win. She stood up, smiling. Take me for a ride on your motorcycle, Honor. We have a couple of hours before we need to be at Nanny's. Let's head to Cape Spear. Cape Spear? It's the easternmost point in North America. It's really beautiful up there. I should talk to the kids before we go. I promised I'd call them every day when I could. Let's do that then. Time is passing. I realized I was the one wasting time. My daughter Marie was still giving me the silent treatment. Carol suggested I be patient. Can you stop by and see Beth for a moment? She asked. Not today, Carol. Sorry, maybe tomorrow. It was the first time I had told her no. She looked surprised. Okay, but it would really help her. She's been feeling low since your last chat. Not today, she nodded sadly. You do what you need to, Honor. I understand. Just don't give up on them. I'll talk to you tomorrow. Thanks for trying with Marie. She nodded again. I said goodbye and ended the call. Jane didn't ask about the call as we drove a few miles to a motorcycle shop so I could buy her a helmet. Canada was stricter than many states, and I only had one. After that, it took us about 20 minutes to reach the lookout point. I stood, gazing at the wide ocean, under the shadow of the old lighthouse. It was such a beautiful place, and I felt lucky to have Jane with me to enjoy it. We walked side by side while she shared a bit of local history. I felt sad when she said it was time to go to her grandparents. I liked having her on the bike, her arms around my waist. I was happy and hardly thought of Beth during the ride. She took me on a detour to Quidi Vidi, where the regatta is held every year. I had just missed it by a couple of weeks. She was already trying to get me to promise to go next time. This is part of who we are, Honor, here in Argentia. You need to see it, feel it, live it. It's part of your story. We parked by the lake, looking over the calm water. I'd like to, but I don't make promises lightly since I don't want to break them. I admit I'd enjoy learning more about it, especially with a lovely tour guide like you. She laughed. I'm sure you'd find someone to join you. Before our Sunday dinner, we had one more stop, which I didn't know about. Jane took me to a part of her family's property near her grandparents' house. I drove down a dirt path until we reached the open area. We're looking for red berries that grow low to the ground. It's the perfect time for partridge berries, and Nanny will appreciate it. They were easy to find, clusters of bright red berries. Some plants had just a few, while others were full of them. They were small, about the size of wild blueberries, and they reminded me of holly berries, just lower to the ground. We filled a bag in under 20 minutes. I tried a few. They were a bit tart for my taste, but still good. 10 minutes later, we arrived at her family home, a simple 2-story house with red siding and white trim, plus a small 1-story wing on the side. He looked very old, as if he had lived for 100 years. Several cars were parked on the grass, filling the driveway. It was clear we weren't the only ones here for dinner. We were greeted with warm hugs and friendly kisses when we arrived. Then I was led away from the kitchen, where delicious cooking smells filled the air. The strong scent of cabbage was everywhere, but the aroma of roast chicken was close behind. The men gathered outside on the lawn in a messy mix of lawn chairs. Uncle Luke was the center of attention, and I was directed to a worn Adirondack chair that had seen better days. Uncle Luke sat in a similar chair that rocked back and forth. Jeff, Jane's cousin and my companion from the previous night, handed me a beer with India on the label. "Enjoy that India beer," he chuckled. We chatted, and they teased me about my earlier performance from the night before. "You're a bit rusty, Honor," one man said, whose name I couldn't remember. "After a few beers, you were out cold." "I really am," I admitted. "I probably haven't had more than 3 beers in one night in the last 10 years. "No bars around you?" Jeff asked. "Not really, I'm afraid. I'm a bit of a workaholic with family taking up the rest of my time. I might have a drink at a wedding or big party, but that's it, maybe 6 times a year at most." "You don't drink when you perform?" asked another cousin who I found out was named Daryl. "I don't perform publicly anymore. To be honest, I haven't picked up a guitar since college." Uncle Luke chimed in. "That's a shame. You need to come home more often. A man needs his outlets. Working all the time isn't good for the soul, yeah?" I raised my beer to him. "I can't disagree. I haven't felt this alive in years." Jeff laughed. "You didn't look very alive when we carried you upstairs last night. You were out cold. I'll keep an eye on you." It was amusing to hear this young man claiming he would be responsible for making sure I stayed upright. I smelled something good in the kitchen. "What's for dinner?" I asked. Uncle Luke looked at me as if I had asked a strange question. "Sunday dinner. I'm sure I mentioned it." Daryl, or maybe it was his brother Darren, chimed in. I couldn't tell them apart yet. "Jig's dinner every Sunday." I was still puzzled, and they laughed at my confusion. "It's a bit of work to make a proper noof out of you. It's boiled dinner salt beef, turnip greens, new potatoes, carrots, figgy duff, and peas pudding. Surely you've had it?" "I can't say that I have," I admitted. "What's wrong with that sister of mine?" Uncle Luke asked with a hint of frustration. "Didn't have Sunday dinner for the family?" "I grew up far from everyone else. I lived in Pittsburgh. I didn't have many chances for a family dinner until I was about 15. Grandma passed away 2 years after I moved back. She wasn't cooking much by then. Uncle Luke was not looking pleased. "No sense of family? Her kids didn't help out?" "Different traditions, I guess. We had family barbecues now and then, and we came together for Christmas, Thanksgiving, and Easter dinners." I felt I needed to defend them. "Family matters a lot. 42 of the people I employ are all related to me. Aunts, uncles, cousins, both first and second. That doesn't count the other companies I hired for cleaning and maintenance. They're all family, too." "42? Uncle Luke asked. "What kind of business can keep that many people employed? A grocery store, maybe?" I shared details about my business, how it grew, and how things turned sour, which caused me to leave. It was a long conversation filled with many questions. I guess I couldn't complain. They were family. Honestly, they felt more like family to me than many at home. As Uncle Luke would say, "That's a shame." Darren, who I recognize now because of his hat, spat on the ground. "Not a single one of them stood up for you? What kind of family is that, son?" I shook my head. "I've been wondering the same thing, Darren. Not one of them backed me up. I supported that whole town, and what did I get for it?" Daryl handed me another beer. "Forget them. Let their business fall apart and let them all struggle. They have no respect for marriage or for the man who puts food on their table. Let them figure it out." "They're family, Daryl," Uncle Luke said gently. "Not the best family a person could have, but family all the same." Then he looked at me. "I don't think they had a reason to disrespect you, did they? You weren't unkind to them?" I shrugged. "I think I treated them okay. I paid good wages and offered great benefits. I helped when they needed it, put 3 of their kids through college every year, shared profits, and added more employees regularly. I even covered some hospital bills. I did my best." I took a sip. "I might not have been the easiest boss. I wouldn't allow drug use at work or allow any dishonesty about hours. I had my rules, and I expected everyone to follow them. My sister says I was too strict, which is why none of them liked me." Admitting that was hard. "That's nonsense," Daryl said firmly. "If you were too lenient, they wouldn't respect you either. It's your job to run things well. They needed to understand that." Sometimes being a firm boss is what's required. I shrugged again. I don't know. I just did my best. That's all anyone can do. Whatever it was, I guess it just wasn't enough. What did you do for work? Uncle Luke asked. I shared the idea behind Honor Energy, a company that focuses on energy-saving systems for nicer homes. We offered smart vents and sensors to help with air leaks. We connected to solar and geothermal energy solutions, including ways to heat water with sunlight. Our control panels were smart and learned the owner's preferences. It was a small market where we were doing well in the Northeast and just starting to grow nationally. It was nice to see they understood most of it. It sparked a lively conversation about the different needs of various areas and how we managed them. We talked about government support, local energy programs, and tax breaks, and how these varied across the different provinces in Canada. We were still going over the details when dinner was called. I didn't have much say in what went on my plate. Jane filled it with a bit of everything, including some things I didn't recognize. The flavors were strong, especially the salt beef and cabbage. It was tasty, but to everyone else it seemed like a feast. I remembered my manners and made sure to say how great everything was and asked about the dishes I didn't know. Uncle Luke smiled proudly. Bet you never had anything like this back home. It's a shame you missed out. It's a bit like a boiled dinner from the diner, just with more ingredients and salt beef instead of corned beef, I replied. Daryl's wife, Anne, joined in. A lot of folks here go for corned beef these days. They make jigs with just cabbage, potatoes, and carrots. It's a real shame it's not the same as the traditional dish. I learned more about the family ties, who was related to whom, where they lived, and what they did for work. Uncle Daryl was lucky to have a crabbing license, and he made a good living from it, along with his sons, a brother-in-law, and a few nephews. His daughter Lena's husband worked with him too. I began to understand a bit more about being in charge from his perspective. Most were second cousins, my father's first cousins, and some were once or twice removed. It was confusing. I figured if they belonged to my father's generation, they were aunts and uncles. If they were my age, they were cousins. I didn't worry too much about the younger ones. After dinner, we moved back outside. I was surprised to see that about a third of the group smoked. Many newfies had that habit. At $8 a pack, it was expensive. I was offered a cigarette, a cigar, and even a pipe from Uncle Luke. I had to explain that I had never used tobacco. Smarter than you look, Uncle Luke joked. We enjoyed about half an hour before the women came outside. As they arrived, more chairs were pulled from the garage. I offered my chair, one of the nicer ones, but Nanny wouldn't have it. It's your first time at my house and you think I don't know how to treat a guest? Next time, you'll have to take care of yourself, she said with a friendly smile. The conversation shifted to politics for a bit, which lost my interest, then split into smaller discussions. Jane moved her chair next to mine, across from Uncle Luke. Honestly, what did you think of dinner? She asked quietly, leaning towards me. It was good. Some of it was a little strange for me, but I enjoyed it. I liked the company more. Comfort food, she replied. Like fish and chips or flipper pie. You'll get used to it and soon you'll love it. Her voice lowered. Did they ask you about last night? About how much I drank? About where you slept? She said softly, looking a bit shy. Not a word. She smiled. You're lucky. She took a long sip of her drink, and I noticed she seemed a bit tipsy. Maybe the questions had bothered her. I was surprised when some neighbors stopped by, bringing their own chairs. I got a quick introduction as our group grew to over 20 people, not counting the little ones who were running around outside. It didn't surprise me when a couple of guitars, an old ukulele, and a squeeze box appeared. Someone handed a guitar to me. Time for the runner and waiter show, Jeff joked. I was confused at first until he pointed to me as the runner and to Ronnie as the waiter. I'm sure my face turned as red as Ronnie's. We sang a few local tunes and some popular songs. I took it easy this time, not wanting to cheat with any hard songs. I was just too happy to go that route. When it was my turn again, Janie asked me to sing a song for her. Your song, which until recently had always been Beth's. I got a nudge in the ribs when I hit the power chords and started singing, Janie's got a gun, Janie's got a gun. The crowd laughed before I moved on to the song she really wanted. When I finished, she sang an Irish song, probably in honor of her grandmother. It wasn't another Gaelic tune, but Four Green Fields, a sad song I had heard before. The second time around, I was encouraged to play Bon Jovi's Wanted Dead or Alive again. I guess it had been popular at the bar the other night. Janie was acting a bit strange and refused to sing, shaking her head until they left her alone. It was a shame because she had the best voice. Instead, she seemed focused on drinking a few more beers. I worried about how it would affect her since she was so small. Everyone appeared to be having a good time, but I noticed more than a few concerned looks directed at Janie. I decided to try to lift her spirits a bit next time around. I turned to look at her. It was late in the evening and she was wondering what to wear. She put on some makeup and brushed her long blonde hair. Then she asked me, "Do I look okay?" I said, "Yes, you look wonderful tonight." I realized I may have sung a bit too much at the end of the song. And the wonder of it all is that you just don't see how much I care for you. Her eyes got a bit misty, and I felt a wave of guilt wash over me. It felt like I was giving her the wrong idea. Luckily, it was a well-known song, and others were singing along too. When I finished, she stood up looking determined. She walked over to Ronnie, a bit unsure on her feet. She whispered to him, and he shook his head. I almost laughed when she grabbed his shirt and whispered something in his ear. Finally, he nodded, though he looked a little embarrassed. She turned back to me, a playful smile on her face as Ronnie counted down for their game. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. "Hey, you! I don't like your girlfriend. No way! I think you need a new one. Hey, you! I could be your girlfriend." She danced around as if she was in a music video, pointing at me. I noticed people's surprised faces, and I was sure mine was very red. Janie finished, holding onto the arms of my chair and singing right to me. "You know it's not a secret, hey! I want to be your girlfriend!" She stood up, grinning, then did a little bow before taking her seat again. The place went quiet. Then Jeff laughed loudly and sang off-key, "I guess it's not a secret." That made a few people chuckle. Her mother, Mary, stood up and took Jane by the hand. She pulled her up. "Mary Jane Chafe, this way." Jane looked at me, rolling her eyes, grabbing her drink before being led away. As soon as she went inside, the sound of laughter and teasing filled the air. Nanny seemed unaware of the tension. "I thought it was a fun song," she said. Ronnie was apologizing. "She had me in a tight spot. Sorry about that." Uncle Luke was giving me a sharp look. "She's not the kind of girl to take lightly," he said firmly. I felt embarrassed. "No, sir. I wouldn't play with her feelings. She means a lot to me. She's made me feel better than I have in months. There's something between us, but we both know it can't go far right now. I have a wife, even if things are complicated. I have kids and responsibilities. Maybe someday when my life is sorted out, but for now, we're just friends." I noticed several people were listening to me more closely than I wanted them to. Uncle Luke wasn't finished. "I'm not sure she feels the same way. She shows her feelings openly, and she has been hurt before. Don't do it on her. Don't break her heart just because you can. She is better than that. She is the best of us. She deserves better, that's for sure." His honesty hit me hard. "I would never want to hurt her, sir. Just the opposite. I'd do anything to prevent that, but I can't ignore that she is only the second woman I have felt this way about." The noise around us grew as Ronnie tried to cheer things up by getting back to playing. Uncle Luke just nodded. "I know you will do the right thing. I've shared my thoughts. I will do the right thing. Isn't that what it always comes down to?" Uncle Darren took Janie's spot when she didn't come back right away. I was starting to understand the connections. I found out he was Jeffrey's father, and his brother Daryl was Lena's dad, who had welcomed me when I first woke up at Diane's house. It was quite a family puzzle. Darren wanted to talk about my business again, and soon we were having a lively discussion. Jeffrey, Daryl, and young Luke debated the advantages, especially in colder regions. They didn't think the cost was worth it. Think what you want. Over 60% of my business comes from states close to Canada. A third of our international customers are from Scandinavian countries. Most homes recover their costs in less than 7 years, and with tax breaks it can be even less. More importantly, it's effective. Homes feel better to live in, I said. I have the figures if you want to see them. Darren disagreed. Nobody wants to spend a lot now only to get it back years later. There's no vision. It just doesn't work that way. I nodded. You're partly right. That's why I mainly work with builders. Luxury homes and upscale neighborhoods are where I do best. The cost is added to the mortgage, and the savings last a long time. Over the life of a 30-year mortgage, the savings can equal 5 times the investment. It's a smart choice. Naturally, we turn to the topic of competition. If it's so good, why doesn't everyone do it? Young Luke asked. I smiled. More will soon. I have several patents that make it more efficient. Without them, it would take 10 years or more to pay back the investment. I just sold one to a big company, so I bet you'll hear a lot more about it. Sounds risky, Darryl said. It's like giving up my favorite fishing spot. You might make some money, but what about later? What if you found a much better spot, bigger catches and plenty of them? I teased. Would you consider selling your old one for a nice check? That question started the talk about my new patents, which brought up how I had left my old company without handing them over. By then, I had enjoyed a couple more beers and I was speaking my mind. They had it made. They were on top. Best pay and benefits in the field, but then they turned on me. I don't handle betrayal well. Let's see how they manage without me making it easier, inventing new ideas, finding customers, and ensuring our product was the best. They are on their own now. But you're talking about families, Honor. You said there are over 200 people? You're just going to leave them? Darren asked, looking worried. You don't understand. They left me first. They chose her over me. Most of my team knew what was happening. I could have brought them down, but I didn't. I handed them the business. Everything. They have the product and the customers, a solid brand. It won't be easy. I'm not there to guide them or give them everything. They'll have to work hard to stay competitive. Now it's on them. But without the patents, Jeffrey said, they had 6 weeks' notice. They could have prepared a 2-year supply of the essential parts. Plenty of time to figure out how to stay competitive. It's up to them. Uncle Luke was listening quietly, but then spoke up. You really think they will? How long do you give them? The group went silent. 6 months if they keep going the way they are. 6 months before they'll have to start letting people go. 4 months if they ignore the advice I gave them when I left. Maybe a year if they do everything right. From what I hear, it's more likely to be 4 months than a year. It's already been over 2 months and it's not looking good, I said. And then? Uncle Luke asked. I shrugged. They close down. 50 people out of work, 3 local businesses lose their biggest customer, and 10 million less going into the community every year. Pretty expensive mistake on their part. But you could stop it, Darren said. I could, but at what price? I put in so much effort for them, and what did it bring me? I gave them everything I had. I have nothing left to offer. They broke me. Look at me now, drinking beer far from home because I can't stand to see them. Even my own mother. She covered up that woman's betrayal. No, I'm not going to make that effort. What do I gain? They get rewarded for hurting me, and I go back to working for ungrateful people. Forget it. Suddenly, I felt a pair of arms wrap around me from behind. Leave him alone. You don't know the whole story. They don't deserve him, Janie said, her head next to mine. Uncle Darryl nodded. We're not blaming him, Jane. It's hard to imagine what it's like to be in his place. But it's family. How would you feel if everyone at that party the other night suddenly lost their jobs? Everyone. And it's even bigger than that. When was the last time you talked to Uncle Bill? Jane snapped. What about the argument you had over selling the pond property? That was just about some money. And what about when Uncle Tom wanted to partner with you on your boat? Since when is family the only thing that matters? They had other choices. It wasn't everything for them. So does his team. He gave them a chance. He trusted them with the business and almost all the money. He deserves to find happiness, don't you think? Would you want to spend your life helping people who let you down? I know I wouldn't, Janie argued. The conversation changed then, and she moved to sit on the arm of my chair, her legs across mine, her arm around my neck. I put my arm around her waist. Everyone began talking about happiness, what it means, and how you can choose your own happiness. I'm not sure if I agreed with them. Too many people have opinions. If you want to take charge of your happiness, you can't let just anyone into your life, especially into your heart. A few people started saying their goodbyes, and our group got smaller. The neighbors left, and the grandparents went inside, but not before I could thank them again for dinner. In the end, only about 8 of us were left outside, sharing stories, enjoying the cool night air. Janie had moved from the arm of the chair to my lap, snuggling up against me for warmth. I looked up and saw one of the brightest falling stars I had ever seen. "Did you see that?" I whispered to Jane. "Make a wish," she replied, closing her eyes. I didn't know what to wish for. More nights like this one, to be with my kids again, to turn back time. In the end, I kept it simple. Happiness. I thought, I wish to be happy again. "It's getting late," I told her. "Are you ready to go?" She laughed. "Nanny would be furious if we let you drive. She likes you, Honor. You get the family room couch. We do need to get up early. I have work in the morning." With no hurry, we stayed a little longer, watching for falling stars and talking about dreams and the future. When there were only 4 of us left, we decided it was time to go. I was shown to the couch, took off my shoes and socks, and felt sure I'd sleep well. My belly was full, and I'd had enough drinks to help me sleep quickly. I woke up with Jane lying next to me, her back to me, and my arm asleep where she rested her head. I pulled her close, turning my head to move her hair out of my face, and pressed my cheek against hers. I felt a bit shy about the situation we were in. She said softly, holding onto my arm and leaning back toward me. "Good morning, beautiful," I whispered. "Shh, just a little longer," she replied, still sleepy. I noticed some movement in the house. We were in a room a little below the main floor, and sunlight was coming in through the windows. "Are you going to get in trouble for being here?" I asked. She seemed to freeze for a moment. "Oh no, I just came down to say goodnight after I used the bathroom." I chuckled and let her go. She turned and quickly kissed me. We weren't alone. Ronnie was on the other couch and Jeffrey was snoring in the recliner. Jane glanced around and quietly left. I wondered where she was supposed to sleep. I was wide awake by then, so I sat up and slowly put on my socks and shoes. I tidied up the pillows, folded the blanket, and looked for the bathroom. As soon as I stepped out, I almost laughed. There was no way that Jane got through without being seen. Nanny was busy in the kitchen making scrambled eggs. I walked up behind her and kissed her cheek. "Morning, Nanny," I said. She smiled at me and then playfully tapped me with her spoon. "Sit down, grab something to drink." There were just a few people at the table, Uncle Luke and either Daryl or Darren, I wasn't sure which one. Anne was nearby, so I guessed it was her husband Daryl. A plate with eggs, toast, and sausage was set in front of me. Uncle Luke looked like he was finishing up leftovers from last night. I poured myself a cup of coffee. Uncle Daryl pushed a bottle of aspirin toward me. I took 3 and thanked him. He seemed to still be thinking about our chat from the night before. "You've got that patent of yours. Are you thinking about starting something on your own?" he asked. "I haven't thought too much about it yet. It's a possibility. Not sure if I'd want to do it back home," I replied while taking bites of my egg and toast. Uncle Luke joined in. "Maybe you should think about it. From what you said, I don't think you have much time left." He stared at me for a moment. "I can't tell you what to do, but you need to think about who's really in the right. How would you feel if you hurt a lot of families in your whole community?" "I wonder how they feel about what they've done to my life," I said, perhaps sounding a bit too harsh. He took a sip of his tea. "I imagine they would feel pretty bad. I know I would. People make mistakes, Honor. We all do. I've made my share." Nanny returned, placing a bowl of eggs on the table. "That's the truth," she laughed. She gently stroked my hair, reminding me of how my uncle used to do it, and it sent a chill down my spine. "Let the boy be. What they did to him was not right. He'll be fine when the time comes," she said. Jane walked in, looking as bright as a sunny morning. She grabbed a piece of toast and took a small bite. "I can't stay, Nanny. We're running late." I quickly finished my sandwich but was too slow to grab my coffee before Jane took a sip. She set it back down beside me. "Ready?" she asked. I wasn't sure if she was in a rush or just didn't want to answer more questions. I finished my glass of water, then took a sip of my coffee. Jane was already clearing my plate and rinsing it in the sink. I would have liked to relax a bit longer and let the aspirin take effect, but I didn't want to argue. I stood up. "Thanks for dinner and breakfast again." "Bye, Nanny, Grandpa. See you later, Uncle Darren," Jane said, giving Uncle Luke a kiss on the cheek. "Oh no, I was mistaken. I thought his name was Daryl." "Honor, if you're free today, maybe you could stop by this afternoon," Darren suggested. "Where?" I asked. "Right across from Lena's place. Jane can show you." "I'll do that. I don't have any plans, but I need to handle a couple of things this morning. How about after lunch? Anytime. You're always welcome. After that, I managed to make my way to my bike. You seemed like you were in a hurry, I joked. If I stayed much longer, they'd have me working. I need to freshen up before my shift, not go in smelling like a brewery, she replied with a laugh. I took her to the hotel where her car was parked. She gave me a nice warm kiss. See you tonight? She asked. I plan to be around. Should I meet you somewhere? Call me around 6. Let me know where you are, she said. I realized I didn't have her phone number, and it took a few minutes for her to add it to my phone. Does it work here? She asked. It works everywhere. I handle a lot of international business. Got it. She gave me another quick peck. I'm not the only one who could use a shower, she giggled, scrunching her nose. Message received. I took it easy for the morning, enjoying a nap in my rarely used bed. I took a long shower and left my dirty clothes in a hotel laundry bag to be cleaned. I stopped by the front desk to make sure everything was okay since I had only used the bed for one night in 3. There were no messages or complaints. Sitting at the desk in my room, I checked in with Aunt Jean to ensure everything was on track. I gave her the bill for the house decorator and she promised to handle it. She asked about my plans to return, but I wasn't ready to commit. You know your daughter's birthday is in 3 weeks. You'll be here for that. Yes, I haven't forgotten, I assured her. I doubt I'll be gone more than another week to 10 days. It's a good 3-day ride on my motorcycle, and that includes the ferry, she said. She fell silent for a moment. I don't want to put too much pressure on you, Honor, but Beth isn't feeling well. If you could take a little time to talk to her, it would mean a lot. I plan to speak with her soon, I replied. I had a brief chat with Roger Hammond, just to let him know I was okay. There was an hour-and-a-half difference between St. John's and Beddenton, so I thought Marie would be back from school. Carol answered the Skype call. Honor, how's everything going? I'm good. Better, actually. Is Marie around? Can she talk to me? She's here, and I'll make sure she speaks with you. You and Beth are too soft on her. She's a handful and a bit spoiled. I chuckled. Like you were any better with BB at that age? She smiled. Maybe not, but I learned. Can I talk with you after you're done? Of course. Just so you know, I plan to call Beth right after this. That sounds great. She's been really down lately, the worst since I got here. I'm sure she'll be happy to hear from you. Let me get Marie. Marie was different since our last chat. She was excited to tell me all about school and her new friends. I barely got to say anything until the end. Come home, Daddy, she pleaded. Soon, Angel, I promise. Just a few more days, okay? I miss you. I miss your stories. I miss you tucking me in, she said with a frown. I miss that too. I love you and I'll be home soon. When? Tomorrow? I can't get there that quickly. It takes several days to travel back. I'm far away on an island. Maybe this weekend, I said. It was the first time I gave her a time frame. But let's keep that a secret, all right? I want it to be a surprise. Her face lit up. Promise? Seeing her so hopeful, I knew I couldn't let her down. No later than Sunday, okay? I promise. Her little brother was with her. They usually talked to me together, though Marie did most of the talking. I enjoyed seeing him and hearing his few words. When he pointed at the screen and said, Dada, I realized I had been away too long. Marie hugged her brother, saying, Daddy's coming home, to him. Then she ran off with the tablet. The camera shook as it showed the floor, ceiling, and walls until it steadied on Carol again. Thanks for keeping everything together, I said. I bet Dave is upset with me. She shook her head. You're probably the only one he's not mad at. He mentioned he might drive up next weekend since it seems like I may not be home for a while. I promise it won't be much longer. I needed this time, Carol. It's helped me. I haven't made any big decisions yet, but I feel clearer now. If Dave wants to come up, I'll buy him a ticket. It's the least I can do. That would be nice. He's talking to Beth again. That's a good start. You're really going to call her? As soon as I'm done talking to you, she smiled brightly. Goodbye, Honor. Tomorrow? Around this time. The screen went dark. I got ready for what could be a tough call and dialed Beth. Honor? Is that you? She answered. You recognize my number? Mom called while you were talking to our girl. How's it going, Beth? I've been better. And you? There was no excitement in her voice. I'm improving. I'm sorry I left so suddenly. I'm feeling much better. I bet, she replied. So, are you thinking of coming back, or are you staying away for good? I won't be gone much longer. I needed this time. I really miss the kids. She sighed. Not missing your wife, right? Of course I miss you. You were the love of my life for over 20 years. I just don't know how to deal with this. You really showed me, didn't you? I guess that's it for us now. Her words were bothering me. Why was it all my fault? I think this call was a mistake, I said. Wow, perfect honor admitting to a mistake, she said sarcastically. I'll admit I've made some big ones. Trusting my wife to be faithful was a huge mistake. Marrying my childhood sweetheart, that hurt. Go ahead, try to hurt me. I deserve it, right? I'm a terrible wife and mother. I've heard it all. Was there a reason for this call, Honor? No, I guess not. I won't disturb you. I imagine you have work to do. She hung up without a goodbye. My good mood faded during the call. I was glad I was going back to see my kids, and even happier about having my own place. I called Aunt Jean again. She laughed. That was quick. I just need a couple more things. Contact Carol and see about getting her husband Dave a round-trip ticket to visit. Got it. Airplane ticket for Beth's dad. Also, can you stock my fridge with the basics on Friday? Eggs, milk, butter, some fruit and salad items. Steaks, ground beef, bread. I got it. I know what goes in a fridge. You coming back? This weekend, I think. I'd like to keep that private. Of course. Your business is yours alone. You're going to love your house. It's beautiful inside. Thanks. Send Carol some flowers to thank her for everything. Again? She chuckled. She just got some Saturday. I laughed. All right, forget it. How about chocolates for midweek? I'll get her one of those fruit bouquets. She paused for a moment. I didn't want to interfere with your mother. Anything for her? No, I don't think so. I'm not in the mood to reward her for her actions. I heard a sigh. That seemed to happen a lot. She is your mother, Honor. She watched my kids while my wife was unfaithful. To me, that's pretty unforgivable. All right. Now she was upset with me, too. Aunt Jean, if you have a problem with this, just tell me. I can find someone else. No, I'm okay. I'm not going to give up the only job in town. I'll do whatever you need. It's not the only job around, I replied. Maybe not today, but what about in a month? Is there anything else? No, that should be everything. I'll email you if I remember anything else. Goodbye. I didn't wait for her to answer. Between her and Beth, I was not in the mood for any more trouble. A light lunch outside helped a bit, and I rode over to Lena's since I had forgotten to get directions to Darren's place. She welcomed me in and offered me some tea before telling me where to go. Lena mentioned that her father worked at the jail, switching between 4 12-hour shifts and 3 days off, then 3 12-hour shifts and 4 days off. He had enough experience to have weekends off. It didn't sound so bad. I was used to working 5 long days and usually half a day on Saturdays. I was sure I wanted a change from that. Darren welcomed me at his home, and Anne handed me a soda with a smile. I don't allow any drinking here before dark during the week. That's fine with me, I replied. Darren had things planned. His son Jeffrey was there, along with Ronnie and another uncle I had seen around but hadn't talked to yet. Tom was Darren's cousin. There were many relatives because Grandma came from a big family. They wanted to discuss business. They were curious about my work and how it could operate in Canada. They asked what it would take to start it. I didn't want to let them down, but it wasn't easy to get into this field, especially without connections in the building industry. I talked to them about focusing on specific parts of my work. I asked about the local engineering talent, and they proudly mentioned their college, Memorial University of Newfoundland, which is one of the top 5 universities in Canada. They had a strong engineering program with a co-op option, so there were plenty of students available for internships. About an hour into our conversation, I noticed their excitement was fading. I had a thought that I wasn't sure I should act on. It felt like it was more than the folks back home deserved. After a few moments of thinking, I realized I had been lost in my thoughts, and everyone else was quietly waiting for me. I need a minute, okay? Let me think of something. Darren nodded. Sure thing. Take your time. I grabbed another soda and went outside. It was cool, which was usual even in summer. The fresh air, beautiful sky, and pleasant breeze were just what I needed. I was still considering different options and their consequences when Ronnie sat down next to me. Don't mind me, he said. I need a break from their dreams. He leaned back in his chair and enjoyed the sunshine. I thought I found a solution that matched many of my wishes. It was something I had never considered before, but the more I thought about it, the better it seemed. I usually didn't act on impulse, especially with something this important, but I was tired of being boring and predictable. "Uncle Tom, what does he do?" I asked. Ronnie took some time to answer. "He mostly repairs air conditioning and heating. He also does some new installations." "How big is his company?" I continued. "It's just him and Uncle Bobby running it, with 4 workers. Aunt Joni answers the calls and handles the paperwork." "Are there many engineers in St. John's?" "They don't stay long. Most move to places like Toronto or Ottawa. Some go even further to Labrador, Calgary, or Vancouver. The university sends out a lot of graduates." "Let's go back inside. This could work." He gave me a curious look but took his drink and followed me back indoors. I shared my idea. They would create the control units, which were essential for my company's energy solutions. They would use my patents, including my 2 newest ones. They could provide complete solutions across Canada, and my company would supply the additional parts they needed. In return, they would manufacture and supply the control boards only for my company in the US. We would have an agreement not to compete around the world. I would take most of Europe, places I already had connections to. They could focus on the Pacific Rim and South America. I thought they should have an office in Vancouver within 3 years to handle business in Asia. Of course, they had many questions. I had answers for most. It would be up to them to decide who would run the company. But I would get 40% in exchange for the patents and $500,000 to start. I also promised to send at least 1 experienced engineer to help them get started. They would need to move fast. If we were going to make this happen, we had to begin soon, and I wanted the new control units within 6 months, or even sooner. The control units will bring in business. You can sell them to other companies, just not for use in the US or Europe. My company alone will give you enough work to hire at least 6 people. 6 months is very quick, Tom said. Yes, I'll be there to help. I'll visit often, and we can have conference calls. I'll provide a skilled engineer to work with you. It's definitely possible, I just don't know much about doing business in Canada. We don't need to worry immediately about a lot of legal stuff. You're family, and I trust you. Darren nodded, maybe a bit annoyed that I even mentioned it. That won't be a problem. We're not like that old group you knew. My word is as good as yours. I think we should put off any other business until the control unit division is up and running. With that set up, you'll have an edge over others. If I think of new ideas in this area, they will be yours. Do you think it can work? What are we talking about for the long term in terms of business? Darren asked. If you achieve the success I believe you can in 5 years, you could have around 30 to 40 employees here and another dozen in Vancouver. It won't be simple, but I will support you, and I have some experience in this field. That's a lot of people, and so fast, Tom said. I started on my own with very little money and weaker patents. In 7 years, I had 50 employees. I could have had more, but I was careful about growth. Last year, I earned over 10 million. Can we discuss this more? Darren asked. Of course. Just remember, the sooner the better. I will be leaving in a few days, and I want to see progress before I go. We could never finish all the paperwork by then, Tom said. Forget the paperwork. I need a plan and a commitment. I'll give you the money and the patent. Just promise me you'll do it, then get started. That didn't solve all my problems. The biggest issue was that I needed to start a new company when I got back home. I believed the old company was finished. I wasn't going to make it easy for anyone. I let them discuss and took my little guitar off my bike. I borrowed a beer from Anne, promising I wouldn't drink it inside. Then I stepped outside to enjoy the fresh air and played a bit on my guitar. I was asked a few questions, which I answered as best I could. They were thoughtful questions, and they made me feel better about my sudden choice. What are you playing? A voice asked. Looking up, I saw Ronnie watching me. Nothing special, just something I started while hiking a month ago. I like it. Is it original? I nodded. Do you have more words than that chorus you keep saying? I did, but sharing them was hard. They were very personal. Ronnie dashed off and came back with a guitar from the house. Does everyone here play the guitar? He laughed. In this family, yes. I showed him how to play the verse and played the melody. No place to go. No home to go back to, no destination on my mind. Where do you go when you're abandoned? Love and betrayal left behind. Not the happiest song, is it? You really are a softie. Ronnie chuckled. I'm sorry, this summer hasn't been great for me. No need to say sorry, I get it. I'm just a waiter, I understand. Lost at sea without an anchor, flying blind. Lost with no sense of up or down, broken heart. Filled with anger, someone save me before I drown. He helped refine the music and made it sound better. It seemed easy for him after I'd spent countless hours working on the tune. It's a Noof song, you know, he said. Noof? How? The new way. It's a mix of old and new. Something a band like Great Big Sea would play. You said you wrote this before coming here, right? Yeah, while hiking the Appalachian Trail. He laughed. That just shows you're a true Noof, whether you admit it or not. Honor the Noof. He helped me create a nice introduction for the song, and we were only interrupted a couple of times. I could hear the voices getting louder inside. When they sent Jeffrey out again, I told him I couldn't answer any more questions without a drink. He brought me a beer, and that was that. You know, we have to play this tonight. Tonight? I'm not ready to share everything with anyone. You have to. They'll want something new. You can only play the same song so many times. Trust me. Who wants it? Another gathering? I told you we're going back to the pub just like everyone wants. You didn't tell me anything. He looked confused. I swear I did. Last night. You weren't that far gone. If he did, I didn't remember. Sorry, I don't recall. Things were a bit crazy. He grinned. No kidding. I thought for sure they were going to keep Janie in her room if she got any bolder. I want to be your girlfriend, he sang playfully. I felt my face get warm. I wasn't trying to give her mixed signals. We know that. It is what it is. So what else do you have that we could play? I had one more song. A fun pub song, I thought. Not as heavy as the others. Once again, Ronnie worked his magic, though it took him a bit longer, and we had a few more interruptions. But by the time he finished and we played it a couple of times, I was amazed at how much better it sounded. Like night and day. I told him so. Really? He mumbled. It's nothing. You did the hard part. I just made it shine a bit. So it's true. You can make something better. His reply was cut off when Jeffrey came back, saying I needed to go inside. As soon as I entered, both men stood up. Uncle Darren extended his hand. We'd love to partner with you on this, Honor, as soon as you're ready. Tom shook my hand, too. We know you're taking a big chance on us, he said. We won't disappoint you. I believe you, I replied. We can open a bank account tomorrow, and I'll transfer the initial funds. It shouldn't take more than a couple of days. I'll leave the plans with you and see if I can send an engineer up this way by the end of next week. I plan to head back by the end of the week, and we'll start working on things from there. In the meantime, I hope you can gather the business details. Darren nodded. We can do that. This should be quite an adventure, he said with a big grin. It will be, I said. That night we were back on George Street playing again. Janie was there when I arrived. Ronnie called and told me where you'd be, she said. I'd have been home alone if I waited for your call. There was a hint of annoyance in her voice. I didn't know where we were going until we got here just a bit ago. Ronnie said it was a surprise. I don't know why. All these places look the same to me. She shot Ronnie a quick look before taking my arm. This is the second biggest dance floor in the area. It's not where new bands usually start. We're not a band, Janie. Just two guys singing a few songs. Did you even see the sign outside? The runner and waiter show featuring Honor the Noof? Are you blind? The banner's huge. I guess I must have missed it. She laughed at my surprised face. Don't worry, Honor. Just have fun. Do what you've been doing. You'll be great. Great, sure. I think I need to talk to Ronnie. She laughed as I walked off to find one more family member. I saw Ronnie helping a guy set up a drum set on stage. What's going on, Ronnie? Setting up, he said. We're the band for tonight, and now we have a drummer? What else is happening that I don't know about? He just shrugged and glanced to the side. I noticed his on-and-off girlfriend was watching us. Not much to say, my friend. Greg, the owner, is a buddy. He offered to let us play here. It's a good gig, and it even pays a little. Free drinks all night for us. People want to hear us. We can't let them down. Ronnie, we haven't even practiced. And now we have a drummer? Pete's good. I've played with him before. He can keep up with anything. We'll be fine. It's not a big deal. Not much different from the other night. The other night where I ended up passed out and waking up in Janie's bed, I reminded him. Are you complaining now? I thought you'd be thankful. Relax. As much as I hated to admit it, Ronnie was right. We played 3 sets, 2 of them to a full house. Janie joined us on stage for about a third of our songs, and she was amazing. She must be well known. Whenever she sang, the crowd went wild even before she started. Ronnie seemed to know half of St. John's. Every few songs, he'd bring someone up on stage, share a story about them, and we'd have a guest singer or musician for a couple of songs. The crowd was lively, enjoying their drinks, singing along, and dancing happily. It didn't matter that our songs had no clear order or theme. They were just there to have a good time. We ended up playing both of the songs I wrote, and I was surprised they were received so well. During the 3rd set, we were even asked to do an encore for one of them. Ronnie and I had reworked a song called The Runner and Waiter before our show. Drink a beer, listen here. I have a story you should hear. About a guy and a girl, how she changed his simple world. It was love, it was fate, when they went on their first date. Everyone knew it was meant to be. Their love was clear for all to see. Should I wait? Should I run? Do I tell her that it's over? Do I tell her that we're done? Should I run? Should I wait? Tell me, how long does it take to turn my love into hate? Feeling the crowd sing along with the first parts of each chorus was thrilling. Hearing a couple of hundred people shout out my words, dreams, and heartache was amazing. I was a bit tipsy during the 3rd set. Janie was on stage with us, along with Ronnie's girlfriend, who was playing a funny-looking tambourine in the back. Janie seemed just as tipsy, and I was enjoying her company. Honestly, I felt fantastic. People were clapping, cheering, and calling out for songs. I mostly followed Ronnie's lead, and it didn't seem to matter. There were young girls in the crowd looking at me with admiration. "Darn it, Honor," Janie whispered in my ear, her arms around my waist. "Don't give those girls false hopes. You're taken, remember that?" At least she said it with a playful tone. "Jealous?" I joked, taking a quick break from playing my guitar. "Seriously? Jealous of an old guy with a messy face who's not the best singer? A married man with kids who would never cheat on his wife? An out-of-work guy from a different place? Jealous?" She pinched me playfully. "Let's see who's jealous. There are some good-looking guys out there checking me out." She turned to leave, but I pulled her back and kissed her, making the crowd go wild. She blushed a lot when I let her go. "I love you, Ducky. You know I do," I said with my best Newfoundlandese accent. Her smile looked a bit sad. "I know you do, Honor, but it's not enough now, is it?" I held her close, looking into her beautiful eyes. "I need time, Janie. You understand my situation." She laughed it off. "I know, Honor. Now it seems there are 2 waiters in the Runner and Waiter band, but I won't wait forever." She stepped away, took my hand, and pulled me off the stage where beers were ready for us, handed by the owner. Ronnie was standing next to him. "I knew it," he said with a grin. "When I saw you the other night, I knew you'd be a big hit. We need to make this a regular thing." I looked at Ronnie, who had a very pleased look on his face. I noticed his girlfriend was right next to him, hanging on him closely. "We'll talk. Ronnie will get back to you," I said. He didn't look too happy with my answer, but he patted my shoulder. "That's fine. We can discuss money then. I'm sure we can agree." It wasn't the right moment to talk with Ronnie, but I knew we would. I didn't like being caught off guard. After we finished our performance, the place was still crowded. We even played 2 extra songs before I begged to stop. I was drained and could barely speak. While Pete was putting away his equipment, I pulled Ronnie aside. "We need to talk." "So talk, my friend. This is a great gig, right? I hope you're not planning any more surprises. You know I can't stay. I'm leaving in a couple of days. I have to go back and handle things," I explained. His expression said it all. "Seriously? You're telling me now? After everything I've done? They expect us next weekend. 2 nights. Good pay. Don't you think you should have talked to me before deciding that? You know I'm not here permanently. Come on, think." "But you told Uncle Darren." "I told him to start things and I would come back for short visits. I can only be here a week or 2 at a time. I'm not saying we can't play, but you need to work with me, communicate with me. Don't just go off on your own." "So when are you coming back then? Do you have any idea?" he asked, looking around. That's when I saw we had a small audience. Janie was behind me with 2 beers, and his girlfriend, who I learned was named Rhonda, was waiting for him. Some cousins from our last concert were nearby too. "I can't say right now. When I get home and see what I need to do, I'll call with a rough schedule. I'd say at least 3 weeks before I'm back. He looked disappointed but nodded. All right, we can work with that. Don't leave me in the dark. I won't. I promise to give you a schedule as soon as I can. He nodded and turned to grab his girlfriend. Janie stepped in front of me and handed me a beer. When were you going to tell me, Honor? I sighed and took a drink. Tonight. I just made the decision after talking to Darren today. My daughter's birthday is in a couple of weeks, and I already told her I'd be back by this weekend. I have to go home to take care of some important matters. It's going to be a tough few weeks before I can return. But I will be back in less than a month. I promise. I took her arm gently. All this happened today. The talk with Marie, the business discussion with Darren and Tom. You have to trust me, Janie. I'm not keeping anything from you. We just didn't have time to talk. She nodded slowly. I believe you, Honor. It still stings a bit. Promise you'll return, hopefully feeling better? I promise. I'm just hoping my mind is clear. I can tell you this. You are the best thing that has happened to me in a long time. I won't forget that. She moved closer, and when she kissed me, I felt it deeply. It's only going to get better, Honor, if you give us a chance. If you're curious how long it takes to write a story, the songs I wrote for this one were sent as poems to a website back when I was still working on Chapter 3 in 2013. Wow, this story has been sitting around for a long time. I'm glad that Black Randall 1958 encouraged me to finish it for the Legends Day event. I knew I had a busy day ahead. I had finances and paperwork to manage. I needed to prepare before heading home and get ready to talk to BB and Mom, among others. I had been a bit lazy lately, going to bed late and waking up in the late morning, eating and drinking whatever I wanted. For once, I got up at a good time and ate healthier. Then it was off to the bank to start a big transfer. Darren met me there and we opened a new account for the business. Things were moving forward quickly. It felt exciting, even if a little risky. After lunch, I returned to the hotel for my daily call home. In just a minute, my plans were turned upside down. Mrs. D was waiting for me. The moment I logged in, she called my name. Honor? Are you there? I'm here, Mrs. D. I'm only a few minutes late. Thank goodness. You need to come home. You have to come home now, she said, sounding frantic. She looked disheveled with dark circles under her eyes. It looked like she had been crying. Is it the kids? Did something happen to Marie or Billy? I asked anxiously. She shook her head quickly. No, the kids are fine, at least for now. It's Beth. I was shocked and disturbed. What happened? Is she okay? She's gone, Honor. I have no idea where. She left a note. I don't think she's coming back. Then she started to cry. Beth was gone, leaving our kids. It hit me how much I had relied on her to take care of the children while I dealt with my problems. I felt terrible for many reasons. What did the note say, Mrs. D? Please tell me. Not much, she said, pulling out a piece of paper. Here, I'll read it to you. Mom, I'm sorry, but I just can't do this anymore. I can't do it without Honor, and he's not coming back. He has moved on, and I can't blame him. It's my fault. Once I'm gone, everything will be better. I just know it. I'm not a good wife or mother, and nothing I do can save his company. I can't be responsible for so many people's welfare. If I disappear, Honor can return and fix everything. Please don't look for me. I don't want to be found. I'm sorry to do this to you. Please tell Honor I'm sorry and that I'll always love him. I love you and Dad, but I just can't cope anymore. Please take care of my children. All my love, BB. I was shocked. Honor? What are we going to do? I'm coming home. I will be there as fast as I can, and then I'm going to find BB and bring her back home. Please hurry, Honor. My baby needs help. I will do my best. Are the kids nearby? Yes, do you want to talk to them? Yes, just for a few minutes, I said. I tried to stay calm while I spoke with the kids. They seemed to be doing okay. Mrs. D had told them their mother was traveling just like their dad. As soon as I ended the call, I took action. I made 3 phone calls. First, I called Darren and Ronnie to let them know I was leaving right away. I didn't share many details, just that there was an emergency at home. Then I made the hard call. Honor? Hi, Janie. Can you talk? Give me a moment and I'll call you right back. She called back quickly. Why is it so urgent to call me at work? She asked, sounding a bit annoyed. I'm sorry to bother you. I have to leave right now. Beth has left the kids with her mother. I need to find out what's going on. I might be away for a while dealing with family matters. The kids come first. I need to fix this. I understand, Honor. Do what you have to. Can I help in any way? She was handling it better than I expected. I'm headed to the airport for the first flight out. If needed, I'll rent a plane. Could you have someone pick up my motorcycle at the airport? I'll tell you where it is, and the key will be hidden under the seat. I can do that. Just let me know when you get there safely, okay? I will. I promise to keep in touch. I care about you, Honor. You know that, right? Did I truly care for her? It was hard to say. I had only loved one woman before, and that was since childhood. My feelings for Jane were unlike what I felt for Beth before everything changed. Yet they were also different, deeper than I felt for anyone else. Janie, in my life, only two women have truly mattered to me, you and Beth. My life is complicated now, but you are my support. I will be back. I care about you. But you still care about Beth, don't you? That was a tough question. I will probably always care about her. She has been a part of my life since she was 4 and is the mother of my children. But caring isn't always enough. I don't know what will happen, but I really don't want to lose you. You won't lose me. Go take care of things and come back to me. Soon. As soon as I can. It wasn't easy, but I managed to book a couple of flights and a car service to get back to Beddenton by 10 that night. When the car pulled in, I texted Janie to let her know I arrived safely. It was almost midnight back in Newfoundland, so I was surprised to get a quick reply. Thanks for letting me know. Be safe. Good luck. Good night. As soon as I walked in the door, Mrs. D almost knocked me over with her embrace. I held her tightly as she cried. I was surprised and a bit annoyed to see my mother and sister there too. Please find my baby, Honor. Bring her home, Mrs. D pleaded. I'll do my best. I promise, I assured her. When she pulled back, Mom stepped forward, but I took a step back. I wasn't ready to reconnect with her. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Honor, she said softly. How can we help? I don't know yet. Are the kids asleep? They've been sleeping for a little over an hour, Mrs. D replied. They'll be happy to see you back. You are home, right? My sister asked. I didn't feel like answering her, but I knew everyone was curious. For now, I don't know for how long. My main concern is finding BB. Do we have any idea where she might be? Mrs. D shook her head. No, she left in the middle of the night. It seems she didn't take much. Her car is gone, and that letter was the only sign we have. All right, there's not much we can do now, but we will get started first thing in the morning. I'll check the accounts and get a private investigator involved. We will find her. I lifted my backpack. I'm exhausted. I'm going to clean up and get some rest. I really don't want to talk about anything right now. Once I've made some progress tomorrow, we can discuss it. Mom and Sis looked disappointed, but they understood. They hugged Mrs. D and tried to hug me too. I didn't return their hug. I peeked in on the kids who were sleeping peacefully, unaware of what was happening. After that, I took a shower, threw my dirty clothes in the wash, and decided to check the family accounts. If Beth had used her ATM card, I might find a hint about her whereabouts. As I logged into the computer, I found my first clue. It wasn't about where she had gone, but why she left. She had been on YouTube, and her latest video featured our first performance. I wasn't sure how she found out, but her search history was full of videos of things I had done. The house party at Diane's where I played while Jane sang. Her little performance at the Sunday dinner at Uncle Luke's. Even my first nervous attempt when we played on George Street. I guess that's what happens when everyone has a camera on their phone. I noticed a couple of videos posted by Rhonda, who was on and off with Ronnie, and Jeffrey had posted a few too. I watched the videos, and they were quite revealing. I could understand why Beth told her mom that I had moved on. It really looked that way. I didn't seem like a man grieving over his marriage. The bank statements didn't help much. They showed 2 big withdrawals of $600 each from an ATM. That was in town, but it didn't tell me where she had gone. Checking our credit cards was just as useless as the bank accounts. I ran out of ideas, shut everything down, and finally slept in my own bed for the first time in months. I didn't get to rest for long. I woke up to my 4-year-old jumping on me. "Daddy's home! Daddy's home!" Marie yelled, using me like a trampoline. I guess that was my fault for getting her Dr. Seuss books. Hop on Pop was always one of her favorites. Billy was still sleeping in his crib, so I placed little Marie on my shoulders and went to get my baby boy. Mrs. D appeared in her robe a few minutes later, looking just as tired as I felt. "You make the coffee," she said, taking Billy from my arms. "I'll get this one cleaned up and dressed." "You're wonderful," I replied. She gave me a strange look. "You wouldn't say that if you knew some of the not-sonic thoughts I had about you once Beth disappeared." It felt like Beth leaving was my fault. It always seemed that way. I had hoped for better from Mrs. D. "Did Dave ever come visit?" I asked. She shook her head. "He's coming at 3. I need to pick him up. I'll leave before 2. Maybe if we hurry, I'll have some good news for him." Sadly, when Mr. and Mrs. D returned home, the only update I had was about the 2 different investigation agencies working on things. Mom had come over to watch the kids while I was trying my best to find any clues. I had only discovered a charge for gas heading west toward New York, about 10 miles out of town. I checked her clothes and toiletries as well as our travel bags. She had only taken 1 full suitcase and a smaller travel case. I wasn't sure how much clothing she had packed, but it didn't seem like a lot. Many of her toiletries were also missing. I called Aunt Jean to let her know I was back in town and that she didn't need to buy groceries. I was staying in our old house for now. I told her why I was back, but made her promise not to tell anyone. I didn't want the whole town to know Beth was gone. That turned out to be pointless because by mid-afternoon I was getting call after call asking if I was back for good and offering to help find Beth. I wasn't sure who spread the word, but in a small town like Bedington, it was hard to keep things quiet. Dad Daniels was a tough man, old-fashioned. He was a lot like my father. He rarely showed much emotion. When he walked in, he stepped forward and hugged me tightly. When he pulled back, I saw something I didn't expect. He had tears in his eyes. "Are you going to find my daughter, Honor?" he asked, his voice shaky. "I'll do everything I can, Dad. I have great people helping me. Trust me on this. Bibi is still my wife, the mother of my children, and the love of my life for 30 years. I will find her." He looked at me for a long time before he nodded. "That's good. Thank you, son. Let me know how I can help." Mrs. D had hold of his arm, holding on closely. "What we can do." For 3 full days, we focused on finding leads, talking to our team, brainstorming where Bibi could be, and trying to keep things normal for the kids. Many people came by to ask about us, about Beth, and about the business. Mom did a good job of keeping most of them away from us. One person I didn't expect to see at my door was Dale. Yes, that Dale, the one who had been with my wife. He didn't look well, and honestly, that didn't bother me. He had lost weight and had a bruise around one eye. I didn't want to talk to him, but Mom insisted I should hear him out. Dale stood on the porch looking very uneasy. I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. "I don't want you in my house." He nodded. "I get it. I know I'm not your favorite person right now." "Exactly. So what do you want?" "Can we walk?" he asked. "Sure. What could it hurt? I could always push him away later." It took a moment before he spoke as we walked. "Fred did something to her," he said. "What do you mean?" "He didn't do anything to hurt her. She had been drinking and he got her back to his place. You know how Beth is, she trusts people quickly. I know my wife. I don't think you understand her as well as you think. I'm just sharing what I heard from Fred. She was sad and lonely because you were busy with work. Fred took advantage of that. He acted like a friend, someone who understood her. Did you know she had tried smoking?" "Bibi? No way." Dale chuckled. "I think you don't know her as well as you think. Fred was there for her when you were away. He got her drunk and introduced her to drugs. Eventually, he tricked her. He told me how he mimicked your voice to confuse her. At first, she thought it was you. He laughed as he told me she kept calling him by your name." "How could he do that?" I said, feeling angry. "That's Fred for you. You see the good in everyone, Honor. You are putting your own feelings onto them. Fred is a bad person. He is my brother, but he is not a good guy. It was hard to understand, but it didn't explain it all. What you're saying makes sense, but how did he get her again? She must have known by then." "Oh, Fred is clever. He said it was the alcohol and smoke. He acted all sorry. He kept apologizing. It took him 3 days to get her to drink and use again, crying and worrying about how to tell you. A few drugs made her weak. He took advantage of her all night and the next morning. She was never clear-headed around him. He had complete control, giving her what she thought she wanted. He is really terrible. and he made her depend on him just to get close to her. That explains some things, but not everything. How did you get involved? I asked. Dale shrugged. I guess I'm not much better than Fred. When you were in China, he told me what he was doing. Honestly, Beth is the most attractive woman in town. When I had the chance, I took it. By then, Fred had full control over Beth, using drugs and blackmail. She didn't have many options. By then, she was taking the drugs just to handle the guilt. That still leaves a lot unanswered, I said. Holding hands in public, how I never noticed anything strange, all sorts of issues. Dale stopped walking. Listen, I don't know everything, just what Fred told me and what I got involved in. I messed up, I really did. I wish I could change it, but I can't. Now that Fred is gone, people around here don't want anything to do with me. I can't find work. I have made enemies that I need to stay away from. I helped ruin things, and I will pay for that for a long time. If you think I feel sorry for you, you're wrong, Dale. Right now, I am trying hard not to lose my temper with you. He nodded. I understand. There's no way to take it back or to make it up to you. I'm leaving. I don't have a future here. Before I go, I wanted you to know that. Beth made mistakes, but she is not to blame for everything. If you could forgive her. Maybe one day. I appreciate you talking to me. Now please leave my property. The next time I see you, it won't go well. He nodded sadly and walked away, feeling much smaller than before. I'm sorry, was the last thing he said as he got into his old, worn-out car. It was a big downgrade from the last one I had destroyed. That was the last time I ever saw Dale. That was just fine with me. I did manage to find a little time each day to talk to Jane and keep her updated about what was happening. I also spoke to Darren and realized that I needed to find an engineer to send to him. I didn't want to delay things, but I wasn't ready to handle business problems yet. Not until I'd done everything I could about Beth. On the morning of the 4th day, we finally got some promising news. I was getting an update from one of the investigators when it happened. Mr. Nolan, we might have a lead that could help. No promises, but I think it could be important. Then why aren't we using it now? It's going to cost a lot of money. It's also a bit of a gray area. Make it happen. We're talking about $20,000. Just go for it. I'll send you the money right away. In the future, don't hesitate to use any resource that could assist us. Do you understand? Yes, sir. If this works, I might have answers by tonight. Great job. I'll be waiting. I didn't want to get anyone's hopes up, but I knew I couldn't hide my excitement from Beth's parents. I made my excuses and decided to work on something that had been on my mind. I drove over to my new house. I have to say that Luann did an amazing job. The place looked fantastic. It felt like something out of a magazine. It wasn't overly modern. It had a masculine vibe that made me feel comfortable. I spent a good hour exploring everything she had done. Eventually, I called Luann. Honor Nolan, she laughed. I was starting to think I wouldn't hear from you again. You could really make someone wonder. I find that hard to believe, I replied. You are impressive. She laughed again. I know, right? Not very modest, are you? A little less than the guy who puts his name on everything? Touché. I just wanted to say how happy I am with what you did. Also, can you do one more small thing for me? I'd love to, she replied. Great. I want to turn my office, the room I mentioned before, into a music room, more like a studio. I play guitar and I'm starting to write music. I'd like a space for it. Can you take care of that? Can I bring in an expert? Whatever you need, I said. Budget? I have no idea what this will cost. I expect it won't be cheap. I need some equipment, soundproofing, and maybe a nice guitar. Got it. Email me the details and I'll consult my guy. I'll get a rough estimate before we start. Same credit card? Yes. Let me know if it exceeds $30,000. Otherwise, just go ahead. She chuckled. I love working with you, Honor. You're the easiest client I've ever had. And you're brilliant, Luann. I know, right? Take care, sweetie. I'll let you know when we're ready to start. This distraction was just what I needed. It reminded me that I didn't want to lose my music again. On my way back to the old house, I stopped by Mom's place and picked up Dad's old guitar. I held the instrument I had learned to play long ago. It felt good in my hands. I was keeping a promise to myself, playing The House at Pooh Corner for little Marie and Billy. She seemed so excited, reminding me of her mother in a way that brought back memories. I was almost done with the last verse when my phone rang. More, Daddy, she cheered, giggling. I need to make a phone call, sweetheart. We can play later. The private investigator had news. Important news. How did you find this out? I asked him. I can't share all the details. I know someone at her phone company. He was able to track her calls and find out where she was calling from. Luckily, she still has her phone, even if she blocked everyone she knows. When can I get that information? I'm sending it in an email right now. When I saw the locations of her calls, I knew it was real information. It was time to involve the parents. It only took a minute to share what I discovered. Do these places mean something to you? Dad asked. They do. She is following the route I took when I left. The last call was from Front Royal. She should be hiking through Shenandoah Park right now. What will you do? I'm going to find her, of course. I didn't leave right away. I took a little rest and left at 4 in the morning so I'd be ready for the journey ahead. I also wanted to dodge the morning traffic. It was a 7-hour drive, including a stop to pick up some gear in case I guessed wrong about where she might be on the trail. I packed a lightweight bag with a few essentials to help me last a few days. My total gear was under 6 pounds, light enough that I could jog if needed. I only packed a spare pair of socks, no extra clothes, and no cooking equipment. I planned to eat energy bars and trail mix. Guessing she'd cover about 20 to 25 miles a day at most, I had an idea of where she might be. I parked 20 miles past the furthest point I thought she could have reached and started hiking up the trail. My main worry was the weather. There was a 50-50 chance of rain, and I wasn't fully prepared for it. My light windbreaker protected me well against drizzle, but not much more. I still loved it. One of the few things I kept from my first hike. Before I hit the trail, I texted Jane to let her know I might be out of touch for a couple of days, but I would keep her updated. Then I called Beth's parents to inform them I was on the trail. They sounded anxious, which was no surprise. I even had a quick chat with the kids. Then I set off. I moved quickly, sometimes jogging. I knew the trail and what I was capable of. I was ready to walk long distances, feeling light with my gear. I thought I could manage 40 miles if I needed to, but as the daylight began to fade, I started to worry that I might not find her. Just then, I almost bumped into her. I recognized her right away, even though she didn't seem to see me. Her head was down, and she was walking slowly, struggling with a heavy pack. A couple of young men were beside her, trying to chat, but she seemed to ignore them. I stood still, waiting as she approached. She looked tired, moving slowly, each step hard for her. She was close when I realized my feet got in her way. She tried to step around me, but I moved to stay in front of her. One of the guys spoke up. "Hey, move aside!" Beth finally looked up, and I wished I had a camera for that moment. She gasped and stepped back, losing her balance and sitting down. "Honor!" she exclaimed, before sitting there in surprise. The young men were unsure, but they tried to help her. One stepped in front of me, hands up, while the other reached for her pack. That wasn't working well. "Thanks for the help, but I can take it from here," I said. One of the guys frowned. "Who says?" "I do. I'm her husband and the father of her kids." They looked unsure, but turned to Beth for her response. It might have been awkward if she denied me. Still sitting down, she turned to them. "Thank you, but I'm okay now," she said softly. They mumbled to each other about missing their chance as I took her heavy pack off her back. "How did you find me?" she asked, still surprised. "You've been part of my life for 25 years. Did you really think I wouldn't look for you?" She was speechless while I tried to adjust the straps on my smaller pack to fit her. Then, I lengthened the straps on her larger pack. I almost stumbled when I put her backpack on. It was much heavier than I expected. We'd need to lighten that load soon. Once I felt it was adjusted enough, I reached out to help her up. She hesitated before taking my hand. "I can't believe you're here," she whispered. "Is this real?" "Yes, it's real." I brushed off her seat and helped her with the pack I had. Her face brightened. "This one is so light." It felt nice to be close to her again as I adjusted the straps on her pack. "Let's go, Beth. We need to find a place to camp. We have a long walk ahead of us tomorrow." It took us about 15 minutes to find a good spot. We hiked quietly even when Beth walked next to me and took my hand. It wasn't the best idea since we both had hiking poles, but I didn't mind too much. I didn't want her to wander off. "Just relax," I told her. "Let me set up our camp for the night. If you want to talk, we can. But we can wait until tomorrow." She nodded and sat on a log, watching me. I need to call your parents. They are really worried. Do you want to speak with them? She shook her head. Her mother picked up the phone. Honor, where are you? Have you found her? I'm on the trail with Beth. We are setting up camp for the night. We probably need about a day and a half to get back to the truck, then a bit longer from there. How is she? Is she okay? Did she say anything? Her father asked, and I noticed they were on speaker. She's fine, but tired. The hike is tough, especially at the start with all the uphill. We haven't had a chance to talk yet. My phone battery is low and I can't charge it, so I probably won't call again until we're back at the truck. Just know she is safe and with me. Can we talk to her? I looked over at Beth, who was watching me closely. She shook her head. She's not ready yet. Let's wait until we're off the trail, okay? Her mother's voice was shaky. Tell her we love her. Please come home soon. I will tell her, Mrs. D. You can trust that I'll bring her back safe. Promise me, Honor. Promise, Mrs. D said. I promise. Good. Now hurry back. We love you both. We love you too. Beth had been quiet during the call and just watched as I ended the conversation and got to work in the dim light. I started looking through her backpack, wondering who suggested she pack so much. She had so many things that it was overwhelming. I began sorting through her stuff, setting aside what we didn't need. Her sleeping pad was big and inflatable, probably weighing 3 or 4 pounds. Her sleeping bag was large too, another 5 pounds. She had a dome tent with poles that seemed heavy as well. All of her main items must have weighed around 20 pounds. I figured she must have picked them from a store like Walmart or Target. In my opinion, we wouldn't be taking most of that with us tomorrow. I thought we might keep the sleeping bag since we didn't have many options. After sorting through her gear, I had a small pile of useful items and a large pile of things to leave behind. I hoped she would say something, but she stayed quiet. I set up my bug shelter and put a tarp overhead since it looked like it might rain. Then I placed both of our sleeping pads inside, along with our sleeping bags. She packed most of her things back into her bag, leaving out only a rain jacket, half of her toiletries, and her food. I poured the water from her hydration bag into my own. Her small cooking set and propane stove would be used one last time. We might as well enjoy a good meal since she had brought 15 pounds of food. How about chili mac lasagna or beef stew? I asked. Stew, she replied quietly. That was fine. I actually liked the chili mac. It was tasty for freeze-dried food. I got the water boiling and prepared the bags. A few minutes later, we sat eating side by side. You hiked this whole trail? She asked suddenly. I don't think I could manage another day. My feet really hurt. We had planned this trip for years. I studied everything so we would be ready. What gear to take, how to prepare. You didn't plan well and ended up with the wrong equipment. I asked the people at the store for help, she said. I'm sure you did, but they just wanted to sell you a lot. My pack was less than 9 pounds when I hiked this trail. Yours is much heavier. We'll lighten your load tomorrow. You won't need all this until we get back to the car. Take off your shoes so I can check your feet. She set her food aside and loosened her boots. I knelt to check her feet and found the cotton socks she wore. Not the best choice. The blisters were not terrible, thankfully. I opened the first aid kit someone had recommended to her. I found some moleskin and bandaged her up. Let it breathe tonight. We can change the dressings tomorrow. I'm sorry, she said suddenly. It's all right. Many people get blisters early on. No, Honor, I'm sorry for everything. I messed up. Yes, she did. Let's not dwell on that right now, okay? Okay, good. Let's clean up and get some rest. We have a long way to go tomorrow. The gear may be lightweight, but it isn't spacious. We were snug inside the tent. It wasn't long before she moved closer to me. BB, I said in a warning tone. Please, Honor. I sighed and opened my sleeping quilt a bit. Beth nestled in closer, and I lifted my arm to make room. I love you, Honor, she whispered. I know, BB. I love you too. She leaned in to kiss me and I hugged her. Not now, baby. Not here, not tonight. We're not ready for that yet. Can I have a goodnight kiss? I foolishly said yes and kissed her back. After a while, I couldn't help but think of our first night together, just kissing and nothing more. Eventually, the kisses slowed, ending with a few gentle pecks. Despite her mistakes, this was the woman I had loved all my life. It was hard to let that go. Do we have a chance? she whispered, her hands resting softly on me. Probably not. I'm sorry. There are too many lies and too much hurt. I'm really sorry. I know I messed up, but I'll make it right if you give me a chance. You have to know I love you. I know. We'll talk tomorrow. Now's not the time. I woke up a couple of times during the night, always sensing her next to me like I might slip away. I missed that connection. I didn't miss remembering why we had been apart. When dawn broke, I slipped away from her gentle hold. I started coffee and breakfast with the last of her heavy food. After this morning, we wouldn't have a stove. A tired BB crawled out of the tent wearing her clothes. I can't deny she looked good. Coffee? She asked. Hot and ready. Breakfast will be ready in about 5 minutes. I'll help with your feet after we eat. As the water heated for the oatmeal, I packed up the sleeping gear and took down the tent. We ate in silence, and while Beth took care of her morning routine, I finished packing my gear. Her sleeping bag added a lot of weight to my pack. It was so full I had to strap her sleeping pad to the outside. By the time Bibi returned and was dressed, I was finished with camp. I wrapped up her feet and helped her with her boots. Why is my stuff on your pack? She asked. We're only carrying 1 pack from here on. We don't need most of what you brought. She shook her head and started searching through the side pockets of her pack. Ta-da! She said, holding up a small nylon bag. What's that? I asked. A portable day pack, she replied proudly. You brought 2 packs? Really? The guys at the store said it would be useful when you went into town if you didn't want to bring the big one. I could only shake my head at that idea. I can help. I can at least carry my sleeping bag. I wasn't going to argue. I handed her the sleeping bag and watched as Beth rummaged through her old pack for more items until she was happy. The little day pack wouldn't weigh much, but it didn't have a frame either, so it wouldn't be as comfortable or carry weight as well as mine. I guessed her pack wouldn't weigh more than 5 pounds, while mine was probably around 12 to 14 with food and her sleeping pad. I'm not looking forward to this, she said. I thought the hike would be fun. The only good part so far has been you. It won't be nearly as bad without you trying to carry too much weight on your back, as long as your feet don't bother you too much. We hiked back to the trail and left her big pack off to the side with a note that said, free. It wasn't the best trail etiquette, but I figured someone could use most of it. After that, we walked up the trail. I carried all the equipment, and Bibi moved ahead of me at a careful pace. It was a tough hike. Not so much in my body, but in my heart. I talked to her about the problems and what I learned from Dale. Bibi, drugs? I'm not proud of that. It was just marijuana. I don't know how Fred convinced me. I guess I was curious and bored. Just marijuana? What about the other drugs you tried? I only did cocaine once. That was enough for me, she said. I know it was a poor choice, but I'm not addicted or anything. That's not a strong defense. If you were addicted, it might explain why you kept going back to Fred. It wasn't like that, she said. I chuckled. Sounds like a classic excuse. Why, BB? Why go back to him? One mistake could be forgiven, but this happened many times over several months. I trusted him, Honor. He was our friend. Even after the first mistake, I thought it was an accident. I didn't mean to give in to him again. Maybe if he offered drugs I didn't know about, that could explain it. I promise, if I did anything else, I wasn't aware of it. She slowed down, and I noticed she was crying. He hurt me, Honor, and I fell for it. Maybe it was the drugs. I hope it was the drugs. He had pictures from the second time. He never directly blackmailed me, but he hinted at it. He was a real jerk. She stopped and faced me. I couldn't be with him unless I was drunk and high. My therapist explained why I messed up so badly. My emotions were all over the place after having Billy. I was upset that you kept working long hours, even with 2 kids at home. I had never been with anyone but you. I felt unappreciated and frustrated that I was not using my education, and I was angry that your work seemed more important than family. Wow, BB. I know, Honor. I get it. It's just a lot to deal with. There's no excuse for my actions. No reason for letting myself be taken advantage of the first time or for going back a second time. And definitely not for believing his lies when you went to China. She turned and started walking faster. I had to hurry to keep up with her. I'm such a fool, she snapped. Inviting him over to end things was so stupid. She was stomping like she wanted to make a mark on the ground. I knew what would probably happen. I'm such an idiot. I wanted to escape. Even after the best birthday ever, I just wanted to escape. One last time, I told myself. I waited to see if she would say more, but she just walked along quietly. After a few minutes, I felt ready to break the silence. Can you tell me about Dale? Dale. That guy. The first time I didn't even know he was around. Fred invited him without telling me. I didn't realize what was happening until Fred was right in front of me. I got really upset, but they held me back and took turns doing what they wanted. I feel ashamed. I guess I got caught up in it. Maybe he did something to me. It all felt like a dream, but I can't deny it felt good. It was like I was on fire and all my senses were heightened. I never expected it. I didn't want it, but once I got going, I couldn't stop. I'm so sorry, Honor. I swear I didn't want it and wish I had never been part of it. That makes two of us. I wish it had never happened. I wish I hadn't seen it with my own eyes. You'll never know how painful that was. I felt like I lost a part of myself. I wanted to ask more questions, but I was too frustrated to continue, so I stopped talking. She didn't offer any more weak excuses. We walked in silence for a good half hour before I brought up the next topic. What were you thinking, Bibi? Running away and leaving our kids behind? Like you have the right to talk. You disappeared for months. You haven't been much of a father for the last couple of years. I tried, Honor. I really did. I wanted to be the perfect wife, raise our kids, keep our home, be sociable. I even did my best to keep that company going, but I just couldn't anymore. She had some valid points. I didn't want to argue with her. I just needed to know more. I know it's been hard, Bibi. Hard? You have no idea. While you were having fun all over the world, making new friends, I was struggling. I was doing everything I could to keep things together while taking care of your kids. I had to listen to people blame me for everything that went wrong. Not you who left them. Just the one they called names. Well, forget them. Forget all of them. And forget you too, Honor, for leaving your family. You might have reasons to be upset with me, your mom, your sister, and even those people who worked for you. But your kids didn't deserve this. Tell me, Honor, how good is it to run away from your two kids who did nothing wrong? Tell me that. She was shouting at me in the middle of the trail, arms crossed, with a fierce look on her face. You're right, Bibi. I messed up, okay? I was so confused and didn't know what to do, so I ran away. I thought I was making the right choice, putting some distance between us while I figured things out. Finding out that my partner and best friend had been with someone else for months and that my mom was covering for it crushed me. It felt like the whole town knew I wasn't enough for my wife. I was heartbroken and confused. I had never faced failure before. To fail at my marriage, the most important thing in my life, was just too hard to deal with. I'm sorry. She sighed and took my hand. You didn't fail our marriage, Honor. I did. The saddest part is I don't even know why. She started walking again quickly. So tell me about this new girl. Is she young? 18? She's not really my girlfriend and she's 24. We're just friends. I saw the videos, Honor. You were singing, I Want to Be Your Girlfriend. It looked like more than just friends. It's complicated. She's nice to me. Spending time with family helped me a lot, I said. Sure, you were having fun while I was struggling. Let's not forget, I didn't start this. I wasn't the one breaking my vows or having fun while everyone covered for you. I've been working hard for years. Whose fault is that, Honor? You made yourself responsible for everything, while I felt like an afterthought. You were supposed to love me and put me first. I thought I was. Everything I did was for us. No. You didn't take time off to be with me, but you could travel for work. Your priorities are messed up. You cheated on me. I felt humiliated. You ruined my world. I'm not perfect. I never claimed to be. I tried to be a good wife and mother, and I made mistakes. Everyone does, even you, Honor. We walked in silence until we took a break to refill our water bottles and eat lunch. As I was filtering water, she broke the silence. Why couldn't you forgive me, Honor? You love me, and I love you. You didn't even give me a chance to explain. You know I'd do anything to make it right. I handed her a bottle of clean water as I filled another. That's the thing, Bibi. Do I really know? Do I really know that you love me? That you won't betray me again, especially since you have before? Come on, Honor. I told you. Told me what? That you were with Fred more than once? Or perhaps it was many more times. That you were with his brother just because he was around. That you were hiding things like using those substances. How much else did you keep from me? What are you still hiding? What do I really know? There's an old saying among hikers that the best place to keep water is in your own body. I finished off an entire bottle before filling it again while BB watched me closely. You don't trust me anymore, do you? She asked softly. Why would I? I thought after 25 years that would mean something. Really? It just makes me wonder. Did you experiment in college? Were you unfaithful back then while I was working for our future? How many more secrets do you have? Honor, give me a break. I never cheated on you before. You were the only person I was ever with until that guy came into my life. And I'm not a drug user, it was just a little... Did you ever do that in college? A few times. It's not a big deal, Beth replied. Why didn't you tell me? You know how tough it is to meet your expectations. I didn't want to fight or disappoint you. So you chose to keep it a secret and then you wonder why I don't trust you. I think you're just looking for any excuse to say you can't trust me so you can run off with your new girlfriend. I adjusted my backpack and handed her an energy bar. Of course you're right. I'm making excuses not to trust you. After all, you've given me plenty of reasons. She stood up and started walking away. Whatever, Mr. Perfect. Mr. I can do no wrong. Mr. Look at me. I'm so noble I leave my kids behind. Mr. Heartless. We continued walking in silence as the sky grew darker and cloudier. I had hoped for better weather, but it looked like rain was coming. I jogged up next to Beth to say we should find a place to take cover. When I caught up with her, I noticed her eyes were red from crying. I'm sorry, Honor. What happened to us? How did we start saying such hurtful things? I can't remember a time in 20 years when we fought like this. We're both hurting. We've been through a lot lately and not much of it has been good, I said. Can we just not discuss it for a while? I feel drained. I thought this hike would help me clear my mind. I was thinking some really dark thoughts before we left. That concerned me. I worried that Beth was struggling with her mood, especially leaving the kids behind. Okay, let's put our problems aside for now and enjoy the scenery while we can. We might not have much time before the rain hits. She laughed lightly. Typical, right? Nothing ever goes smoothly. The wind was picking up, signaling that a storm was coming. The sky looked dark, and I could hear thunder rumbling in the distance. I had hoped we could walk longer, but it was not even 4 o'clock yet, and we would have to stop soon. The good news was that we had probably walked close to 20 miles already. Keep an eye out for a good spot to camp, I suggested. After a few more minutes, we spotted what looked like a well-used campsite a short distance from the main trail. What do you think? I asked, pointing to it. Lead the way, she said, sounding a bit tired. Now was not the right time to correct her saying. We walked through some light bushes until we found a cleared area. It looked safe with no low branches overhead, and the ground was slightly raised, so I thought we would be okay if it rained hard. I quickly set up the bug tent and tarp, while Beth inflated the air mattresses. I checked the lines of the tarp and found some sticks to help keep the stakes steady in case things got rough. The sky turned almost black, and the thunder sounded closer after each flash of lightning. Luckily, we finished setting up just in time. You're really good at this, Beth said. It takes me forever to set up camp. Sometimes it frustrates me how easy it is for you. I guess that's fair, I replied. I could get jealous of how easily you make friends. Everyone always liked you. I had to work hard for the few friends I found. Beth laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. You have no idea. When you upset the town hero, you realize how many friends you actually have. It's just me now. Not one person talks to me anymore. She was organizing the sleeping gear inside the tent, her back to me. It's rough when your own dad wants nothing to do with you. I could smell rain in the air and felt the first drops fall. I knew it would turn into a heavy downpour soon. Take off your boots. Let's get everything inside and look at your feet, I said. She turned to block the entrance while she took off her boots. I knelt down to help her just as the rain started to come down harder. A flash of lightning lit up the sky, followed closely by a loud crash of thunder. Beth jumped at the sound. She always disliked thunderstorms. We managed to get her boots off, and I took off my shoes. Just as I got inside the tent, the rain picked up more forcefully. With all our gear inside, it became quite cramped. I checked her feet, and the moleskin had kept the blisters from getting worse. That was a relief. I took off the bandages. Let's let these air out until tomorrow morning. I think we only have to walk part of the day to reach the truck. The rain started pouring, making it hard to hear each other. The good thing was that the storm wasn't too cold. It had been a warm day and the temperature had dropped a little, but it was still comfortable. As I looked outside at the rain, Beth caught my attention with her movements. I turned to see her changing into her underclothes. "What are you doing?" "I feel really dirty and so do you," she said. "Why didn't you tell me that hiking could be this messy? It just didn't come to mind." Beth searched through her small backpack and found some wet wipes. She began cleaning herself up. Looking at me with a playful grin, she said, "You should clean up too if you want to stay in this tent tonight." I thought about reminding her that it was my tent and I had good reasons to ask her to leave. But we were trying to get along, and I didn't want to start another argument. Once I changed into my shorts, I had to admit it felt nice to have the cool air touching my skin. The wet wipes helped us feel fresher. "Can you help me with my back?" she asked. I turned to see she had removed her top and was sitting there in her underwear, waiting patiently. It was hard not to feel a rush of memories. She had been very special to me, and she still looked beautiful. Wiping her down reminded me of happier times. It had been months since I had been close with anyone, and this situation was not helping. After I finished, she turned around. "Now it's your turn," she said. I turned my back to her with the rain pouring down and thunder rumbling. I felt her warmth on my shoulder. "Don't, please," she sighed softly. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. I've missed you so much, especially at night. Haven't you missed me too?" "Of course I have. You can't just forget all those years we had together." "Let's get under the blanket," she suggested. Only then did I see that she had opened our sleeping bags. Hers was on the bottom, and mine was on top. It was a smart idea. Her bag was thicker and would keep us warmer. Mine was lighter and would help keep the heat in from above. She was already under the blanket when I joined her. Soon after, she moved closer to me. "Can you hold me? I'm scared." I understood. She had never liked storms and was always afraid of lightning. The storm outside was intense, with the wind shaking the tarp and the rain pouring down heavily. Once I stood up, she handed me a meal bar and a Snickers. I have to give her credit for bringing those. "We can have breakfast while we walk," she said, and took off ahead of me. I quickly caught up. The path was wide enough so we could walk next to each other. "Are you okay?" I asked, noticing the changes in her. "I'm as good as I can be from now on," she replied. "Don't lag behind. I miss my kids." We had been walking for just a few minutes, still warming up, when she started to talk. I knew it all along. I tried to convince myself that everything would be fine, but deep down, I knew. Once I was with Fred the second time, it was over. You wouldn't take me back. You see things in black and white. You're all about right and wrong. I think that's why I didn't stop myself. I felt guilty, but I knew I had messed up. I chose wrong. I gave you up because of my own mistakes. I thought about letting her share her feelings, but I wanted to say my part too. "I'm not sure that's right, BB. I think we could have worked things out if it was just us. If you had only messed up that one time. But when you included my family, when everyone in town saw what happened, and when you made the same mistakes again while I was away, it became too much. Maybe. Who knows? Maybe you would have taken me back, but things would never be the same, right?" she asked. "No, probably not," I admitted. Our hike that morning was mostly quiet during the tough parts, with short talks in between. It was a lot better without anger. There was one last thing that bothered me, and I knew I wouldn't feel complete until I asked about it. "Tell me about Fred," I said. "That guy? He's gone. Left 2 days after you did. He abandoned his family and just disappeared. The last time I saw him, I had to fire him for lying at work. I knew he wasn't working full-time. I don't think he even worked 20 hours a week." She laughed, and it struck me as odd. "Fred argued until I had to stand my ground. He got angry, and I had to take action and call security. The next day, some guys from work found him alone and gave him a lesson. They promised they would do it every day he stayed in town." "Do you know where he went?" I asked. "Not at all. I don't want to know. That guy messed up my life. I know it's not all his fault, but if it weren't for him, I wouldn't have strayed." You really have to be careful with friends, Honor. After a long silence, Beth spoke up again. How long are you back for? Have you thought about your old business? I'm not sure. I have some ideas, but they don't involve Honor Energy. I'm done with that. I'm thinking about starting a new business, but I will be more careful about who I hire. I'm done with them too. I tried hard, but no one valued my efforts. I could hear the whispers behind me. I won't try anymore, so I guess that's it for them. She slowed down until I caught up, and we walked side by side as the path opened up. Will I see you at all? You're the mother of my kids. As long as I'm around, I'll be close. I think we'll see a lot of each other, I said. But you won't be living with us anymore. No, I have my own place now, she sighed. Sometimes I wonder if it would be easier if you just left for good. Then I could move on and leave my mistakes behind. They're my kids too. I know, Honor. I'm glad you're remembering that. I won't keep you away from them. My home will always be open to you. It was interesting to hear her talk like this. It's her home now, not ours. I think we both understood the new way things had to be. We reached the parking area where the trail met the lot. I walked out from under the trees. Beth stood by the edge of the pavement. I'm parked right over there, I said. This is it, isn't it? Once I get into that truck, it's really over. The trail was a nice dream. Then it's back to my hard life. It will get better. The kids will really miss you. We still need to plan a 5th birthday party for this weekend, I said. Beth nodded. I watched her take a deep breath and step forward. It took her a moment to gather herself. Then she forced a smile and walked to the truck, tossing her pack into the back. I'm not getting in that truck until you promise me something, she said, leaning against the side with her arms crossed. What is it? You have to feed me. Once we leave this park, I really need to eat. I'm so hungry. I think we can arrange that, I replied. I placed my bag with hers in the back after taking out my wallet, keys, and phone. I unlocked her door and she got in, quickly taking off her boots. I climbed into the opposite seat, started the truck, and plugged in the phone charger. We should call your family. Are you ready for that? She nodded and picked up the phone to make the call. I could only hear part of the conversation. Mom, it's me. Yes, Mom, we're on our way back. No, I can't discuss that now. Honor and I are driving back and we can talk then. She turned to me. How long until we get back? She asked. At least 7 or 8 hours. It's 2:12 now. She held the phone to her ear again. I think we'll arrive between 10 and 11 tonight if all goes well. I don't know, she replied. As I said earlier, we'll talk when we're back. Let me talk to the kids. She spent a good 10 minutes talking with Marie and even a bit with Billy while I drove north. I managed to say a few words on speakerphone. When she finished the call, she was crying again. I gave her leg a gentle pat. Everything will be okay. No, it won't. Things might improve a bit, but it will never be the same. Can we not discuss it? At least not until I've had something to eat. What about my car? She asked. Don't worry. I'll have someone pick it up. It will be home within a day. The drive home was uneventful. We had a big meal in Front Royal, and she slept for most of the journey. While she was resting, I made a couple of calls. I reached Darren to let him know I would start working on the business, and I called Janie to update her. I promised her a longer chat the next day. A couple of hours later, I woke Beth for another feeding around 7 o'clock. At 10:45, I parked in front of our old home. As expected, there was a warm and emotional welcome and some tough conversations. The kids stirred awake, and we spent a few minutes with them before settling them back to sleep. It was after midnight when I drove away to stay at my place in town, alone. Before I left, Beth gave me a hug. Good night, Arnold. Thank you for picking me up. Maybe you can come by tomorrow to see the kids and we can make plans for Marie's birthday. I'll do that. It hit me that it was the first time Beth called me Arnold. I guess honor no longer felt right, and I have to admit, a big part of that change was on me. Still, it stung. Thanks for watching this video. Don't forget to subscribe to Infidelity Plus to stay updated with more captivating tales of infidelity and payback. Turn on notifications so you're the first to see our latest content.